Chapter 609. The milky white light shone down, illuminating a 50-meter radius around Constantine. It was like a projection of heaven on earth. Constantine, who was wearing a tattered tuxedo and a dirty white shirt, suddenly disappeared from the Holy Light Kingdom. An instant later, he mysteriously reappeared beside Lu Cheng. Clenching his fist, he charged straight at Lu Cheng's face. It was the Savior's supernatural ability, Flash. In the words of the Church, to walk on earth is to walk in his kingdom. Following the change in Constantine's position, the area enveloped by the holy light also shifted. Lu Cheng's ice mirror clearly illuminated the surroundings. The moment Constantine appeared, Lu Cheng sensed it. With a twist of his waist, he turned his body from the side to the front, avoiding the enemy's attack. His left fist shot out from his waist, aiming for the opponent's lower abdomen at lightning speed. Not far away, Renly took a step to the side, shifting her position horizontally. She didn't turn around in a hurry. Instead, she swung her forearm, holding her sword, and swung it back. A thin but sharp green blade slashed towards Constantine's neck. Facing a pincer attack, Constantine didn't put up any defense. His joints cracked, his arm bent like a snake, and his dodged fist swung diagonally towards his opponent's head. Seeing this, the previous scene flashed across Lu Cheng's mind. When Constantine was shrouded in the milky white light, Satha smashed a fireball at him. At the same time, he suffered a strange explosion at the same part of his body. Without any analysis or consideration of the cause and effect, Lu Cheng instantly made a decision based on his battle instincts. He detonated the Emperor Yen force in his wrist, causing his fist to shoot upwards and hit Constantine's right forearm from the bottom up. The impact caused the milky white glow to flicker, scattering starlight, and caused his opponent's punch to deviate from its original position. At the same time, a strange airflow exploded. His right forearm hurt, and he almost lost his defensive stance. As expected, Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat as he understood. At this moment, Renly's green wind blade slashed at Constantine's neck, splitting the milky white light and forcing him to tilt his head subconsciously. Swoosh! The airflow stirred, and a thin blade appeared out of thin air, cutting through Renly's defensive squall and leaving a deep wound on her fair neck. Just as blood was about to gush out, her muscles wriggled and sealed the wound, leaving only a hideous scar. Failing to land a hit, Constantine disappeared and reappeared behind Renly. He threw a straight punch at his opponent's spine. The surface glowed with blood red, as if it was poisonous. Renly's eyes didn't change. She slightly leaned to the side and pulled back her arm. The hilt of her sword was like an iron hammer, ruthlessly colliding with the enemy's fist. Constantine paused, and disappeared, leaving only afterimages, and Renly almost lost control of her long sword. Bam bam bam. Constantine kept flashing, as if he had become two people. He fought separately with Lu Cheng and Renly, not giving them a chance to launch a pincer attack. Every punch and claw of his was infused with the power of darkness and blood poison, which could invade the enemy and bring about continuous negative effects. If it weren't for Lu Cheng's Emperor Yen and Renly's plague sect, and the fact that force concentration could effectively neutralize the negative effects, they would have been suppressed by Constantine alone. Even so, considering the terrifying and strange rebound, both of them were a little restrained. Bzzzt bzzzt bzzzt. Around Renly, the milky white light was like the noon sun. It quickly melted the snow and neutralized the hidden fragrance that she had secretly cast. Bam bam bam. Lu Cheng punched and kicked, mainly defending against the enemy's frenzied attacks. He had planned to scatter the flames and trigger the rain of fire to hasten the disappearance of the kingdom of holy light. It was obvious from the battle between Constantine and Satha that such a domain would be weakened by external factors and wouldn't last long. However, after a few rounds, he keenly sensed that Dark Knight Bat's combat skills were not very outstanding. He seemed to rely more on different supernatural abilities. In less than 30 seconds of battle, he had used more than 6 types. His combat skills were only at the level of a beginner in the Dan stage. He could be considered proficient, but not strong. He might have studied and practiced, but he definitely hadn't put in the most effort. With a thought, Lu Qing swung his forearm to block when Constantine's palm, which was shrouded in black gas, came at him. Seeing that the two of them were about to collide, he suddenly unleashed the hidden Emperor Yen force, pushing his forearm up and making a sudden change in direction. Then, his joints popped and his 5 fingers stretched out rapidly, grabbing the enemy's wrist. Passing through the thin milky white brilliance, he completed the capture. Lu Cheng's other hand seemed to be shackled by the void. But that didn't stop him from loosening his grip. He twisted his arm like a snake and held it against his joints, temporarily restricting Constantine's flash. Constantine's weakness wasn't obvious when they were fighting openly. But when it came to close-quarters combat and agility, his weaknesses were exposed. At that moment, Renly stepped on the ground and changed direction. She stabbed her sword at Constantine's side and visualized it in her mind. Just as she was about to hit the milky white light, she suddenly turned the tip of her sword into a tip. Using the blade as a lever, she lifted it up. Whoosh! Wind howled. A cyan light erupted under Constantine's feet and turned into a tornado. It wrapped around him and sent him up into the air. Lu Qing pulled back in time and wasn't affected. Wind Sec's 10th move, Breath of the 9 Heavens. While Renly was also affected by the tornado and was floating uncontrollably, Lu Qing suddenly bent down and was parallel to the ground. The power of 9 Heavens Breath surged into Constantine's body, restricting his freedom of movement within the kingdom of holy light. He could only watch as his body rose. But he wasn't worried at all about Lu Cheng's accumulated power, for he was still wrapped in the milky white brilliance. Thanks to his super strong self-healing ability, all harm must be repaid. 1 for 1, no problem. Constantine's dark red eyes flashed. Lu Cheng's eyes were wide open. He straightened his back and raised his hands as though he was questioning the heavens. Around him was the reflection of the universe. Darkness and coldness were the main elements, embellished by heaviness and scorching heat. Following the direction of his arm, the scene shot out into the holy light country and enveloped Constantine. The fusion of cultivation and martial arts, cosmic phantom. In an instant, the milky white light around him froze as though it had turned into an ice coffin, turning Constantine into a bug trapped in amber. How dare he? Hardly had Constantine's shock occurred to him when the stars collapsed one after another and crashed into the ice coffin. There was no end to it. Boom! 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 Flames exploded in midair. Blazing white and blue fireworks bloomed, swallowing the holy light country completely. Boom! 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 Lu Qing seemed to be frozen in place and couldn't move. The air around him burned spontaneously, firing cannons in the air. Fireballs swarmed and exploded one after another. Boom! 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 The shockwaves crashed and the fierce flames burned. Lu Qing covered his entire body in the ice armor. He didn't hold back at all as he surged with force, shattering layer after layer of crystals. Renly landed on the ground. She twisted and turned her long sword, stirring up a strong wind that blew away many of the fireballs and scattered them around. Seeing that the ice spirit force was almost exhausted, the explosions finally stopped. Lu Qing stamped his feet and charged out of the smoke. His body was mostly charred and injured. In midair, Constantine's milky white brilliance had completely disappeared. He no longer had the sense of holiness and holiness. His tuxedo and dark red cape had completely shattered into pieces, turning into butterflies fluttering in all directions. A few strands of his hair were still burning silently. His feet stepped through the special leather shoes with cracked bottoms and landed on the ground. He wasn't injured, and his aura didn't drop significantly. However, at this moment, he was no longer the savior. Narrowing his eyes dangerously, Constantine leaped, dodging Renly and pouncing on the exhausted and injured Lu Qing. He wanted to finish off or severely injure one of them first. When it came to one-on-one, it was much easier to decide whether to fight or run. At this moment, Lu Qing raised his hands and pointed to himself. he said in a deep voice, "Jia." In just a short moment, he was rejuvenated, full of energy and replenished with ice force. Other than some residual injuries, he didn't look like he had been through a fierce battle. Seeing Constantine close in, he gathered his chi and blood, gathered the universe in his lower abdomen, and shifted the stars to form the fighting formula. Suddenly, Lu Cheng's muscles expanded dramatically. Tendons popped out and moved like dragons. Bam! He threw a punch at Constantine, and the strong wind that he stirred up extinguished the flames around him. Constantine knew that Lu Cheng knew the 9 words formula, but he didn't expect him to use it like this. The shadow of the fist in his eyes grew bigger and bigger, as if he was looking at a legendary giant. Chapter 610. At this critical juncture, Constantine, who couldn't retract his momentum, could only stomp his right foot and push out his fists to block Lu Cheng's iron hammer. The ferocious force made all his muscles and fascia vibrate like a spring, producing a buzzing sound. Boom! At the point of contact between the two of them, the airflow exploded and white waves rippled outwards. Constantine felt as if he had turned into a pyramid with his fist as the tip. Under Lu Cheng's terrifying strength, one point led to the rest of the structure, which spread rapidly and was about to cause the collapse of the entire pyramid. Constantine didn't dare to take it head-on. His arms sank and his body floated backwards as though he was sent flying. However, the air currents in the air buffeted his body, allowing him to retreat even faster than Lu Cheng's stride. If it had been a one-on-one fight, he could have gotten rid of Lu Cheng's follow-up combo and turned the tables around with this supernatural ability. However, his opponent was not alone. He suddenly felt a sharp pain in his back. His spine felt like it was about to explode, and all his hair stood on end. Ren Li's sword flashed like a shuttle. The green needle-like light pierced towards his tailbone. It was fast and urgent, but silent. Constantine's eyes narrowed. Dark red blood light suddenly rose around him. His rapid retreat came to an abrupt halt. It was so strange that it seemed to violate the laws of physics. Bam! His accumulated strength exploded. He turned to the side and dodged Ren Li's fatal sword. However, this delay allowed Lu Cheng to close the distance. He gathered his chi and blood again and used the stars to form the fighting formula. Bam! He was more than 2 meters tall, with bulging muscles and bulging veins. He looked like an ancient giant from the depths of the underworld. He shook his shoulders, tightened his arms, and swung out like a sledgehammer. The shadow in his eyes deepened. Constantine took a deep breath and inflated his body like a balloon. He was more than 2 meters tall, a few times thicker. His white shirt and casual pants weren't as loose as his martial arts suit. They immediately tore apart, revealing his pale green skin and exaggerated muscles. This was an ability he had absorbed from a victim. He named it Hulk. He swung his arm like he was swinging a baseball bat and hit Lu Cheng with a bang. The muscles of the two giants bulged, and their veins were bulging. Their thick arms collided with each other, raising a tornado and deafening explosions. Rumble. Lu Cheng swung his arm back and took a step back, returning to his 1.8-meter-tall form. Constantine, on the other hand, stomped on the ground, leaving behind 2 distinct giant footprints. His body began to shrink. Right at this moment, Ren Li made her move again. Green light flashed and hacked down vertically, about to split the opponent in half. Having learned her lesson from the previous pincer attack, she didn't attack at the same time as Lu Cheng. Instead, she attacked back and forth, one after another. This was to prevent Constantine from using his supernatural ability to block both of them at the same time and create an opportunity to escape. Her overall goal was to not give him a chance to catch his breath. While the Hulk's power was still intact, Constantine slapped the side of the green sword light. Ren Li's longsword was knocked askew and almost slipped out of her hand. However, Ren Li's vertical slash was just a pretense. Her killer move came from her feet. She kicked out with both feet and exerted force in a small area, creating 2 thin but sharp wind blades that slashed at the enemy's chest. With 2 puffs, Constantine's abdomen split open, revealing hideous flesh and blood. He shrunk back to his original size as though he had been deflated. Just as he was about to reach out and grab Renli, she had already retreated with the wind. Lu Qing took a step forward and used force concentration again, forming the fighting formula. Bam, bam, bam. His muscles swelled, exploding with gang chi sounds. His martial arts suit was stretched tight, perfectly outlining his masculine and muscular body. Seeing his opponent transform into a giant again and swing his fist at him, Constantine could only grit his teeth and summon a dark glow. Rolling black gas made everything around him sticky. Rumble. Lu Qing landed a punch on his opponent's forearm. The violent force disintegrated his dark glow, and the black gas turned into butterflies that fluttered in all directions. Dark Knight reassembly, neutralizing the force and taking away the impact. The dark glow and black gas dispersed. Constantine's face was so pale that it was almost transparent. His body seemed to have lost its sense of existence, drifting away with the wind like an illusion. At this moment, Renli used wind steps and caught up with him. She jumped up before the countless vampire bats could fly back to reassembly. She turned around in midair, head down and legs up. Whoosh! The wind howled and the sword flashed. The clear mist spun at high speed, bringing with it a tornado that enveloped Constantine. The wind's sex 12th move, Heaven's Burial. The tornado was getting stronger and stronger, and the sharpness was getting stronger and stronger. Constantine's head was being attacked by the sword will, and his head felt like it was splitting open. He roared forcefully, and the bats flew back faster. Pft! 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 When the wind stopped, Renli's figure reappeared. She flipped around with her sword 10 centimeters above Constantine's head and landed firmly behind her enemy. Constantine shielded his head with his arms. His eyes were blank and unfocused. Before Lu Qing could attack again, a series of smooth cuts suddenly appeared on the surface of his body. Following which, the wind exploded, tearing his body into pieces. Constantine's arms were broken into 5 pieces, and there were countless pieces of his torso. Only his legs were still intact. Along with his internal organs, they were scattered all over the place. Bam! Constantine's head finally hit the ground. Due to his protection, there weren't any wounds. However, the light in his eyes had dimmed, leaving behind only confusion and unwillingness. Pfft! That was tough, Renli exclaimed in satisfaction as she sheathed her sword. Dark Knight Bat wasn't just strong, he had many tricks up his sleeves. Even with her and Lu Qing working together, they almost couldn't hold him back. Let's leave this place first. I'm afraid that the general will notice us and come back, suggested Lu Qing as he looked around. Okay. Renli was also exhausted. She didn't want to watch the commotion in the military base. Instead, she and Lu Qing left the place and came to the entrance of the highway in the north of the city. Renli looked at the sky and said, I have to meet up with Priest in Decca. I won't stay there for long. I'll leave as well. I'll consider returning to the war-torn zones after I master the wind, sex, physical and vulnerability chapters. I might even participate in the title match. What about you? Yeah. We haven't mastered our respective physical and vulnerability chapters. Compared to enemies of the same level, our weaknesses are more obvious. Lu Qing nodded in agreement. If it weren't for the fact that his cosmic phantom was equivalent to a physical and vulnerability secret art, he might not have been able to take down Dark Knight Bat or the Mummy. After lamenting, Lu Qing continued. I won't be going to Decca. I'll make a trip back to Fartuat first. I'll get information on Lin Ke and see where he was last seen. Do we need to enter the war-torn zones? If possible, Lu Qing planned to ask his master to bring him the ice, sex, physical and vulnerability chapters. He would enter the war-torn zones to look for Lin Ke after he mastered the basics. Alright then. I'll be leaving first. Renli replied with a smile. She waved her hand casually and ran south without looking back. She was full of confidence as she ran back to Kukhang. The corner of Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He hurriedly stopped her and pointed her in the right direction. After watching Renly leave, he thought for a moment and returned to Kukhang. He took a detour to the place where he fought with Constantine. After the death of the Dark Knight Bat, Lu Qing didn't feel relieved. Instead, he still felt tense, as though he still had a premonition of danger. That was why he planned to return to the battlefield and examine it carefully. He also planned to take a piece of Constantine's flesh with him and hand it over to the military for research. At the place where the physical invulnerability experts had last fought, smoke drifted in the air and body parts were scattered everywhere. A few flames burned weakly in the surroundings. Everything was as quiet as an oil painting. After a few minutes, Constantine's head suddenly moved. His dark red eyes rippled with vitality once again. He exhaled a thin red mist that shrouded the surroundings. The pieces of flesh wriggled strangely, slowly returned, and reformed. After failing to severely injure the two enemies in the Kingdom of Holy Light, Constantine knew that he wouldn't be able to escape by normal means. Therefore, he didn't make any unnecessary attempts. Instead, he worked hard to create a situation. He used the final and most bizarre ability of the Savior to escape his predicament. Resurrection. As long as his head wasn't crushed and his flesh was still intact, he could be resurrected. For this reason, he appeared to be at a loss. He alternated between arrogance and shock. After a dozen minutes, the mangled Constantine finally stood up. Every wound on his body was still there, making him look like a terrifying stitched monster. He was at his weakest now. His self-healing ability wasn't enough to heal his wounds. "I will repay you properly." Constantine gritted his teeth as he struggled to move away. He was very weak now and didn't want to take any risks. He didn't want to be seen by Lieutenant General Amon, who might come to investigate after noticing the commotion. At this moment, his heart skipped a beat. He turned his head to the north and stared at Lu Qing, whose face was full of astonishment. They stared at each other. "No!" Constantine roared in grief and anger. He tried to stagger away. Why is he back? In his confusion and shock, Lu Qing instinctively activated the attainment formula. A strong wind blew as he rushed to his opponent. He shook his left arm and threw a punch at the strange enemy's face. Constantine raised his fists to block but was knocked away. Lu Qing's right fist, heavy and scorching white, followed up with a bang and landed on the enemy's nose. Crack. Constantine's nose collapsed. His face was deformed and cracked. His eyes were filled with fear and despair. Then, the white light exploded. Boom! Countless fragments, stained with red and white colors, sprayed out, painting a beautiful abstract oil painting. P.S. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 611. Bam! After smashing Constantine's head with one punch, Lu Qing lifted his left leg and lashed out again with a whip kick. With a layer of blazing blue flames, his kick landed on his opponent's body. Smoke and dust flew up, and the body that hadn't completely fused back together was torn apart again. His body was set ablaze and slowly burned, emitting specks of red light. Only then did Lu Qing heave a sigh of relief. He had never heard of a mighty one who could resurrect after being dismembered. Even the vampire emperor of the Samano royal family couldn't do it. Only the Mission sect had always claimed that the savior from 2,000 years ago could do it. However, they had added too many religious elements and mysteries to this story, so it wasn't as believable. Who would have thought that Dark Knight Bat would be able to accomplish such an unbelievable feat? It was almost like a miracle. If it weren't for the fact that he had a premonition of danger and the alarm in his heart hadn't been lifted, he might have been able to escape. There would have been no end of trouble. Just as Lu Qing was about to burn this strange enemy to ashes, he suddenly realized that the blood flowing out of his body had changed into different shades of red. There was dark red, rusty red, pale red, bright red, and so on. They intersected with each other, dotted with faint blue and milky white, and bubbled from time to time. This didn't look like blood at all. It looked more like a carelessly added chemical reagent. Constantine's muscles and tendons were also wriggling, each growing in a collapsing fashion. Some were paralyzed, while others grew new fingers. It was a hair-raising sight. "Gene collapse," muttered Lu Cheng, frowning slightly. He had seen the tragic state of a gene collapse in the military's research materials. It was very similar, except that Dark Knight Bat's blood was even stranger. After a few seconds, all the changes disappeared. The flesh lost all signs of life. Some rotted rapidly, while others were perfectly preserved. "This is so King weird." Lu Cheng couldn't help but curse. He found a piece of flesh the size of half a palm, sealed it in layers of ice, and kept it in his pocket. As for the rest, he smashed down with his fist, causing blazing white flames to spread in all directions as they collided with the ground, burning them to ashes, leaving no medium for resurrection. After doing all that, he finally had the time to think about how Dark Knight Bat could come back to life. Could it be that his body structure has mutated to the point that it's similar to an earthworm? As long as it's not cut vertically, it doesn't matter if it's split in half. But just now, his heart was his heart, his lungs were his lungs, and his liver was his liver. There was nothing special about it. Perhaps his mutated root pulp is similar to a single-celled organism and can survive for a while. As long as it gathers again within a certain period of time, it won't completely lose its vitality. And this gathering is guided by the mind, so there shouldn't be any problems with the brain. Forget it, I won't think about it anymore. I'm not a researcher. I'll leave it to the military. But there's one thing I'm certain of. Dark Knight Bat's resurrection ability needs to be prepared. Otherwise, he could very well trade my life with injuries. Although Renli's Sky Burial is powerful, it doesn't threaten my life right from the start. It's more of a serial attack. At this point, Lu Cheng still didn't know the names of the two enemies just now, so he could only call them by their nicknames. After looking around, Lu Cheng didn't stay any longer. He left Kukhang at high speed and headed back to the port city of Fartuat. He only rested for a while when he found a secluded spot in the desert. He used the confrontation formula to clear his mind and body and accelerate the recovery of his injuries. After Lieutenant General Amon led the troops to occupy Sotha's military base, he returned to the temporary base amidst the lingering gunfire. He waited for a long time but didn't see the mummy or Constantine return. He doesn't want his sarcophagus anymore? He's so badly injured. Amon was puzzled. He felt that something was amiss and immediately got up. Traversing through the urban jungle, he sprinted back to the battlefield where Sotha had been forced to self-destruct. He looked around and quickly found the mummy's severed arm and palm. The yellowish-white bandages were all gone, and the charred skin had been sliced clean like a fruit, leaving only flesh and bones. He's dead. Amon narrowed his eyes, shocked and furious. There must have been a fierce battle here. Unfortunately, the gunfire in the military base was louder and the flames were brighter. Amon didn't notice anything amiss. Plus, no matter how badly injured the mummy was, he was still a demigod. He shouldn't have been killed so easily. Did Dark Knight Bat do it? Amon followed the trail, but it had been a long time. His aura had long since dissipated, so he could only give up halfway. But in the meantime, he found Constantine's attack that had split the ground open. He found the flesh and blood that had been deliberately set up. This made Amon overturn his previous guesses. His heart grew colder and colder. When he sent a regiment of soldiers to search the surroundings, he finally found another battlefield. He saw shattered bones covered in brain matter and ashes everywhere. Dark Knight Bat is dead too. Amon gasped, his heart skipping a beat. After working together, he had a better understanding of Constantine's strength and expertise. Judging from his mysterious behavior, he definitely had some hidden abilities. Even Amon wasn't confident in winning, let alone killing him. Killing two demigods in one go, even if one was heavily injured and the other a weakened demigod, wasn't an easy feat. It might even be extremely difficult. Just the thought of an enemy lurking in the dark sent chills down his spine. After a few seconds of silence, Lieutenant General Amon returned to the temporary encampment. He didn't search or pursue the matter, afraid that he would accidentally hit a steel plate and lose his life. In the heavily guarded headquarters, he reported to the pharaoh. On the other end of the line, there was silence at first. Then, he asked, "Any clues?" "No. They destroyed the corpse and destroyed the traces. But from the remnants of Impose's arm and palm, at least one of the enemies is skilled in cutting," Amon answered honestly. There was silence on the other end of the line again. After a while, he finally spoke. "Put it aside for now. Maintain order in Kukang. We'll investigate after this is over." "That's good too." Outside Fartuat port, on a cruise ship, the sky was high and the sea was blue. The wind was clear and the scenery was vast. Lu Qing stood on the deck, admiring the waves of the Sea of Death. He took out the satellite phone he had borrowed from the consulate and called his master. After recuperating, he had completely recovered. He had also changed out of his tattered martial arts suit and was now leaving with the last batch of evacuees from the port city. "Hello?" Before long, Shi Jiangwo's aged voice sounded from the other end of the line. "Master, it's me. Cyrus and his family have evacuated from Nile." Lu Qing explained the final details of the mission. "I knew about it last night." "Not bad. You did well," praised Shi with a forced smile. This was supposed to be a difficult mission filled with danger. He might even have to exchange blows with a physical invulnerability mighty one. With his disciple's supernatural ability awakened for the third time and his body tempered by the Jin Dan, he wouldn't die so easily. But the stimulation would definitely help him build up his willpower and make the great leap. In the end, he advanced in advance without external help. Not only did the mission become redundant, but its difficulty also plummeted. Lu Qing briefly described the process and asked, "Master, is there any urgency with Lin Ke? Should I practice the physical invulnerability chapter or look for him first?" With brother-in-law's strength, it wouldn't be easy for him to get into trouble in the war-torn zones. It shouldn't be a problem to delay it for a while. Shi Jiangwo coughed and said, "There's no hurry. Old man Ji has changed his mind. He got Shushan Studies men in the war-torn zones to watch over him and the military to help. He might also go for a stroll himself. You don't have to worry about that. Come back first. Practice the physical invulnerability chapter and stabilize your connection. Lin Ke is a prideful brat." Old man Ji deliberately sent him to the war-torn zones to train. He asked you to look for him as an excuse to train you. But now, what's the point of training? "Alright," sighed Lu Qing. If brother-in-law hadn't awakened his supernatural ability in advance for the sake of becoming the national champion, he would have reached the peak of the inhuman stage by now. If he had trained for 2 years in the war-torn zones, he might have been able to reach the physical invulnerability stage. But he had just entered the inhuman stage and had just stabilized his foundation. As for the physical invulnerability stage, that was even further away. Lu Qing closed his eyes and thought about Lin Ke's cold and reserved face. He suddenly felt that he wouldn't turn back until he reached the physical invulnerability stage. Hope for the best. Shi didn't dwell on this matter. After a moment of silence, he said, "Are you going to return to Longhu after mastering the basics of the physical invulnerability chapter?" "Yeah. I owe the Dragon King and the club too much," replied Lu Qing with certainty. "That's good too. You haven't practiced the physical invulnerability chapter of the Fire Sect. If you complete a few more secret missions, you might be able to comprehend the divine kung fu of the Restriction Sect," said Shi happily. "Secret missions?" asked Lu Qing thoughtfully. "They should have told you before. After joining Longhu, you will occasionally have to complete missions assigned by the military. For an inhuman, it's very simple. All you have to do is be a security guard and cooperate with some experiments. When you reach the physical invulnerability stage, it will be relatively more difficult, but not too dangerous. Dangerous missions. You won't be the only one. Perhaps the Dragon King will participate as well. Anyway, after accumulating enough contributions, you will be able to comprehend the divine kung fu of the Restriction Sect of Taoism." Geezer sure gave a rough explanation. Half sighing and half disdainful, he said, "Come back as soon as possible. Once the connection is stabilized and you have mastered the basics of the physical invulnerability chapters of the Ice and Fire sect, you will be considered a true physical invulnerability expert. At that time, you will have plenty of opportunities to fight opponents of the same level. There will be plenty of life and death battles. Don't be like Pang and Ren, impatient to challenge physical invulnerability level enemies." Lu Qing suddenly felt guilty. "Master, there's something I need to report to you." "What is it?" Geezer sure tensed up. His heart was in his mouth. This brat rarely speaks in such a tone. What did he do? Lu Qing cleared his throat and said, "I met Renli last night. Together with her, we killed 2 physical invulnerability experts." "What did you say?" Geezer sure raised his voice. Chapter 612. Shocked by his master's reaction, Lu Qing started from the beginning. "In order to buy time for Cirrus and his family, I chased after the mummy for a long time. Then, I moved to the east of Kukhang City, planning to harass any pursuers along the way and not give them a chance. Who knew I'd run into Renli, who was lost? At this time, an intense battle broke out at the military base. We were curious and went to watch. On the way, we met the mummy, Dark Knight Bat, and a physical invulnerability mighty one dressed like a general. They were ganging up on Satha. That should have been Satha." He rambled on, not to explain, but to give his master time to think. "We didn't plan to attack at first. But when Satha self-destructed, the mummy was heavily injured, and the physical invulnerability mighty one dressed like a general left. Dark Knight Bat suddenly mentioned Peng Liyun and my name. He seemed interested in our blood. He even planned to use coup in America to lure me in. Master, this is unacceptable." At the end of his speech, Lu Qing defended himself a little. Geezer sure's tone returned to normal. "So, you took action? You killed the mummy first? Tell me the details." He tried his best to act like a foolish disciple, but he couldn't help but curse in his heart. If physical invulnerability experts were easy to kill, they wouldn't be called physical invulnerability experts. "I've roamed the war-torn zones for so many years, but I can count the number of people I've killed single-handedly, in groups. You've just broken through, and you've already killed 2 of them. Is there any justice in this?" Even with the help of demonic matriarch Qi's disciple, Renli, and the fact that the mummy was heavily injured after a fierce battle, it was still shocking news. Lu Qing immediately described the battle from beginning to end, including his self-created cosmic phantom, and how Dark Knight Bat was sewn back together after being dismembered, and how he came back to life. Geezer sure's attention was diverted. He said, half shocked and half in awe, Dark Knight Bat suddenly appeared. This black bat appeared out of nowhere. Even the Americans are confused. They don't even know who he is. Only their popular superhero culture can create something like this. We sent agents to investigate the battlefield where a few physical invulnerability mighty ones died and found that the black bat is indeed powerful. He doesn't seem like someone who has just made a breakthrough. TSK, the mission sect has always been praising the resurrection of the Savior. They claim that his blood contains the password to life. Who would have thought that the vampire-like black bat also has it? Brat, you didn't forget to bring back a piece of black bat's flesh, did you? This concerns whether or not your master's old injuries can be healed. Lu Qing was overjoyed. I definitely haven't forgotten. At least 3 tails. Are you trying to weigh pork? Geezer sure scolded jokingly. Master, can this really heal your old injuries after studying it? Lu Qing asked with concern. Geezer sure was silent for a moment. He sighed, which was a rare sight. Back then, I was one of the best in the war-torn zones. I was practically invincible. At this point, he paused again, as though he was reminiscing about the glorious days of the past. There's something wrong with your use of idioms. Lu Qing criticized silently, not daring to interrupt. Sigh, It's a pity that I met a forbidden expert later on. This old man will never forget that battle. Although I managed to escape from danger, I was severely injured. His strange power invaded my body and fused into my root pulp like cancer cells. If Elder May hadn't restrained it in my lungs, would have gone to meet my ancestors long ago, that external, root pulp, is inseparable from my own. They have almost become one. No matter how many methods are used to kill all the indiscriminate creatures in that area, it will reappear as new roots grow. If I were to change my lungs, my root pulp would have already mutated. The rejection reaction would kill all organs that aren't my own. Cough, cough. My spirit fed back to my body and increased my tolerance, but I still couldn't completely digest it. If the military can find something from black bat's flesh, this problem might be completely solved. This was the first time Lu Qing heard his master talk about his injuries. He couldn't help but ask, "Master, which forbidden expert was it?" "Heh, what's the matter? You still want to avenge your master?" Geezer sure snorted, then softened his tone. "We'll talk about it when you enter the forbidden territory. I'm telling you now, if you do anything stupid and impulsive, I won't be able to hold you back. You make it sound like I'm a dog that will break free from its leash and run away when you're not paying attention." Lu Qing complained inwardly. He didn't ask any more questions and set a return date with his master. After hanging up, he looked at the golden light shining in the waves and called Yen Jika. "Hello?" The girl's soft and gentle voice sounded a little nervous. Lu Qing retracted his gaze, restrained his smile, and said hurriedly, "I've completed my mission." Yen Jika's tone lightened. "Awesome. I knew missions would be easier after you reached physical invulnerability." She paused and said, "Are you going to the war-torn areas to look for my brother next?" "No need. My master said that your grandpa, our grandpa has found someone else from Shushan study. He wants me to hurry back to the sect to practice the physical invulnerability chapters and consolidate my realm." Lu Qing replied with a smile, his expression gradually relaxing. "That's for the best. With grandpa involved, he's worth two." Yen Jika said in a good mood. Then she said with a hint of worry, "But with my brother's stubborn temper, there's no way to bring him back unless he's knocked out." Lu Qing didn't hide his thoughts and said, "I reckon he'll stay in the war-torn areas in the end, but he'll find a physical invulnerability expert from the military or Shushan study to look after him in secret. Brother-in-law is holding his breath and won't return until he reaches physical invulnerability. Sometimes, my brother is really too tense." Yen Jika sighed. After chatting for a while about Lin Kei, Lu Qing said with a sigh and a smile, Our summer vacation trip was interrupted not long after it started. It's okay. This experience is better than 10 trips. Besides, we saw the aurora and the pyramids this year. It's enough," Yen Jika comforted him. "I'm going to train at Yanbing Mountain. Why don't you come over? Just treat it as a vacation." "I can't train the whole day. Physical invulnerability level secret arts are very taxing on the mind," Lu Qing suggested with a smile. "Okay." Yen Jika replied happily. After confirming the details, Lu Qing boasted, I met Renli who was lost last night. We worked together and killed 2 physical invulnerability experts." "That can't be." Yen Jika was stunned. She asked in confusion. "That's a good reaction." Lu Qing was secretly pleased. He told her the whole story, especially emphasizing Dark Knight Bat's bad intentions. Yen Jika was stunned. She felt touched and warm, but at the same time, felt that the supernatural ability of the enemy didn't seem to exist in reality. The wind on the deck was strong. With no one around, the call lasted for a long time. He even condensed frost to lower the temperature of the satellite phone. By the time he finished the call, the cruise was nearing the shore. Only then did he seriously consider whether the military would reimburse him for the phone bill. Tigny's city. Lin Kei restrained the enemy and punched him in the chest, crushing his heart. Bam! 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 His punches and kicks connected, leaving the enemy without a complete corpse. After doing all this, Lin K bent over, put his hands on his knees, and panted heavily. His black hair, which he hadn't taken care of for some time, hung down, almost covering his dark and introverted eyes. Sweat soaked everything. There were obvious wounds on his body. There was even blood at the corner of his mouth. After a few seconds, he forced himself to stand up straight and took a deep look at the enemy. A mafia organization that abducts adults, traffics children, and breeds organs for the rich and powerful, waiting to be matched, could casually send out an expert with inhuman combat strength. Is this the war-torn zone? Retracting his gaze, Lin K turned into a rundown street. The people guarding the entrance were children in their teens, carrying real guns. His footsteps were light. Lin K's back slowly disappeared at the end of the street. Wuyue Province, Shanggao Airport. Lu Qing got off the flight in a relaxed manner. He didn't have any luggage, only his phone, wallet, and the special gifts he bought in Acropolis. With so many people coming and going, he didn't have to worry about stray bullets or explosions. He was safe and smiling everywhere. He turned on his phone as he walked. While chatting with Yan Jika, he sent a message to the driver who had contacted him before he got on the plane. "I'm here." The driver replied quickly, saying that he was beside the pillar facing the arrival hall exit. He didn't describe what he was wearing because he believed he could recognize Lu Qing, the former heavenly son of the era. He's been out of the martial arts circle for almost a year due to injuries. He's about to make a comeback. I wonder how he's doing. The driver guessed curiously. After a few minutes, he saw Lu Qing walk out. He was wearing a white t-shirt with exotic patterns, casual pants that reached his ankles, and dark-colored running shoes. His posture was leisurely and his expression was peaceful. He didn't look like he had just gone through a bad time or suffered a heavy blow. "Hello, Martial Uncle Lu," the driver approached him with a smile. He was half an ice god sect disciple and had served in the sect for almost a decade. "Hello." Lu Qing nodded with a smile. He was approachable, but clearly didn't want to chat. The driver understood and didn't nag. He led Lu Qing to the parking lot, pressed the key, opened the door, and invited him in. Lu Qing sat in the back and leaned back comfortably. Sometimes he chatted with his wife, sometimes he closed his eyes to rest. The driver occasionally glanced at him through the rearview mirror. He felt that this martial uncle of his had an outstanding bearing. He was neither arrogant nor self-abased. He had the air of a grandmaster. The injuries this year have really trained me. The driver thought to himself as he drove the car more steadily. After a while, the car drove into Yanbing Mountain. Looking at the surrounding scenery, Lu Qing sighed. The last time he was here, he had just gotten rid of a hidden danger and was in the midst of recuperation. He was relaxed and had some baggage. But now, he was at peace, at ease, and at ease. A physical invulnerability expert was considered a top executive anywhere. Outside the sect, Lu Qing got out of the car. With a smile on his face, he walked through halls and rooms. Under the greetings of disciples and servants, he arrived at the Ice Queen Pavilion. In the pavilion, Geezer Shur was drinking a little wine and shaking his head. He, whose white hair was thinning, came to a spot near the door. He sized Lu Qing up and suddenly sighed. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Chapter 613. Lu Qing would be lying if he said he didn't feel proud and happy after hearing He Yi's words. However, he had been through a lot, so he kept a smile on his face and bowed. "Sect Master, you flatter me." Geezer Shur curled his lips in disdain. He Yi shook his head and laughed. "You don't have to be humble about this. Anyone with a discerning eye can see it clearly. Reaching physical invulnerability before the age of 23 is a few months earlier than Wisdom King. Even in the history of the past 1,000 years, it's rare." At this moment, Shi Jiangwo interrupted, "Sect Master, don't praise him like that. This brat is so proud that his tail is about to stand up. It's good to reach the physical invulnerability level, but from now on, you have to forget all your previous achievements because your opponents will become physical invulnerability experts. Which physical invulnerability expert isn't a dragon or phoenix among men? Although you and Little Ren have killed 2 of them together, don't forget that they went through tough battles. Master, you're right, but why do I feel like you're showing off? Lu Qing complained in his mind, but he still answered respectfully, you're right, Master. Then hurry up and practice the physical invulnerability chapters. Geezer sure glared at him, then asked worriedly, have you given the black bat's meat to the military? I gave it to them in Acropolis, Lu Qing said honestly, but he was complaining in his heart. If I didn't give it to the military in advance, how would I get on the plane? Should I tell the security that it's fresh beef? I don't want to be treated as a psychopathic murderer. You're quite reliable, Geezer sure praised him reluctantly. He didn't nag further. He turned and led Lu Qing underground. After passing through layers of barriers, they entered the secret hall. This place didn't change much from the last time Lu Qing was here. It was still filled with whistling cold wind and falling goose feathers. In the middle of the room was a transparent cabinet with the ice essence bead. The 4 walls were hung with visualization diagrams of the 9 physical invulnerability unique arts. In front of each diagram was a stone table with a set of moves, detailed explanations, and notes of predecessors. Make good use of it, but try not to spend more than 3 hours a day, he reminded with a smile. There was a fundamental difference between understanding the surface of physical invulnerability unique arts and practicing it directly. Yes, Martial Uncle Sect Master. Now that Lu Qing was standing in an extremely cold environment, there was no need for him to circulate his flame force to warm his body. It was as if he had become one with the heaven and earth around him. He watched as he slowly walked away. After the heavy door was tightly shut, he went to the vicinity of the 5th style, enemy heart freezing move without hesitation. He looked at the heart of 7 orifices that looked like an ice crystal mirror. The frosty white fog around it shrank and expanded, making everything seem to come alive. The reason why he chose to practice this unique skill first was because he had already reached the realm of encountering gods in the void. His spirit had also undergone a qualitative change after making the Great Leap, so he should be able to get started in no time. He sat down cross-legged on the snow-covered ground. His deep eyes, which seemed to contain a vast starry sky, reflected the mysterious and transparent heart that communicated with the fine details. Gradually, the suspended visualization diagram didn't change. However, the enemy heart freezing move in Lu Cheng's pupils began to contract and expand slowly and rhythmically. Lube-dub, lube-dub, lube-dub. The 2 heartbeats seemed to have merged into one. He felt as if the dust had dissipated. His body and mind were at peace. His emotions were no longer stirred. Gradually, various things appeared around him. This is similar to the confrontation formula. Lu Qing thought to himself. Using the stone of the mountain, he started to work on the jade. Time flew by as he practiced. Everything was silent. After an unknown period of time, Lu Qing suddenly felt something. He could actually hear He Yi's footsteps through a few heavy metal doors. Below the silver-covered ground, a few bugs were slowly traversing. Naturally, a vivid image of them appeared in his mind, as if he was seeing it with his own eyes. The world was peaceful. Everything was in harmony. Everything was so beautiful. Lu Qing seemed to have changed his perspective and gotten to know nature all over again. This is the enemy heart freezing move. He half closed his eyes and sighed in satisfaction. Using the experience from the confrontation formula and the solid foundation of ice mirror, he was able to reach the threshold of enemy heart freezing move in just 3 hours. With another 2 or 3 practice sessions, he would be able to grasp the basics. Apart from the ability to see oneself, the enemy heart freezing move also had part of the effects of the confrontation formula and all the characteristics of the forwarding formula. In gaming terms, it was an increase in resistance to negative emotions and mental attacks. Apart from that, the enemy heart freezing move could also see the opponent, sense their emotions, grasp their movements, and make predictions in advance. It was like a demon. It also seemed to have improved in terms of premonition and intuition. Shaking his slightly swollen head, Lu Qing stood up and walked towards the door. During the practice session, snow didn't accumulate on the surface of his body. Due to the instinctive reaction of his muscles and skin, he flicked off every goose feather that landed on his body. Refreshed, he walked out of the secret hall. Seeing that his master had already left, he walked slowly towards the Songtao pavilion with his hands in his pockets. From time to time, he would take pictures of the mountain scenery and share the joy of his gains with Yan Jika. As for the girl who had just entered the dance stage, she was practicing the corresponding martial arts of the fighting sect and the Ji family. Her life was fulfilling and satisfying. Walking around the corridor, Lu Qing saw a martial arts training ground. Many Ice God sect disciples were practicing under the guidance of their instructors. They were sweating profusely and full of vigor. The real headquarters of the Ice God sect was located in the Ice God building in Moshang. Apart from a few ceremonies, most matters were handled there. However, the ancestral grounds were quiet and far away from the hustle and bustle. It was perfect for new disciples to focus on their practice and build a solid foundation. Seeing Lu Qing slowly walking over from the corner of his eye, the instructors quickly turned around and greeted him with a salute. "Greetings, Martial Uncle Lu." The disciples followed the rules and didn't stop their practice. However, they couldn't help but sneak a few glances at Lu Qing. Seeing such a scene reminded Lu Qing of himself and what happened back then. His heart was filled with joy. He nodded gently and said, "Everyone, practice hard." He stood idly by and watched for a while before strolling away amidst the increasingly hard-working and serious performance of the disciples. Passing through the corridor under the shade of the trees, he returned to the Songtao pavilion. The pine forest here was verdant and undulating, just like before. Ice God building. Zhu Tai had already become a senior executive in charge of a certain industry. He had just walked out of the elevator and turned to his office when he suddenly saw his junior brother, Lei Fong. Seeing how the confident and energetic Lei Fong had turned into a steady and disciplined person, Zhu Tai sighed inwardly. He pushed his glasses up and greeted him with a smile. "Why didn't you go over there?" "I'm here to collect my pocket money," replied Lei Fong calmly with a slight smile. He had officially joined the Wuyue Club a few months ago and was arranged to participate in several high-level professional matches. Zhu Tai nodded and sighed. Good luck. A 26-year-old inhuman is not hopeless for a physical invulnerability expert. Unlike me, it's already impossible. He was already 32 years old and could clearly feel the stagnation of his mental growth and the solidification of his visualization. Initially, Zhu Tai was rather dissatisfied with Lei Fong and was secretly jealous of his master's favoritism. However, when his hope was cut off, he gradually sobered up and calmed down. However, when he woke up at night, he was still depressed and couldn't get over it. "Then I'll thank senior brother in advance for your auspicious words." Lei Fong lowered his head and laughed. "However, in the Wuyue Club, I'm not the one with the most hope of making the great leap. Jin Yu is 28 years old and a senior fourth pin, close to physical invulnerability. Xian Qiue is 25 years old and has been at the inhuman stage for almost a year." After saying 4 or 5 names, he laughed at himself. "I often regret my decision back then. I should have entered the Wuyue Club earlier. With so many people stronger than me and the atmosphere of competition, perhaps I wouldn't have to wait 3 years to transform from a 6th pin to an inhuman." In the past few years, Lei Fong had stayed in the Ice God sect and participated in some low-level professional matches to hone his skills. "He's still stronger than me." Zhu Tai shook his head and sighed. The two brothers exchanged pleasantries for a while before parting ways. However, they were already on different paths. The next morning, birds chirped in the mountains. Lu Cheng had just woken up when he received a message from Yan Jika. She sent an emoji with fists shining. Another day of hard work. She planned to wait until she had a basic grasp of the 2 dance stage techniques before coming to Yanbing Mountain for a holiday. After that, she could go to America for Aunt Du's guidance. Seeing this, Lu Cheng couldn't help but smile. He replied with a handshake emoji. Let's do it together. After finishing his morning training, Lu Qing ate his breakfast and rested for a while before entering the secret hall again to practice the enemy heart-freezing move. At the same time, he also observed the second move, mesmerizing snow steps. When he finished his morning training and returned to the Ice Queen Pavilion, he smiled and said, "Let's go to the Wiyue Club in the afternoon." Huh? Lu Qing was confused. Shouldn't the focus be on training? Why should I go to the Wiyue Club? Speaking of which, I haven't been there yet. He smiled and explained, "Go and experience the Polar Laboratory. This can help you stabilize your connection with heaven and earth as soon as possible and speed up the progress of the physical and vulnerability chapters. Of course, you're still a beginner, so don't use it too often. It's better to use it once every 3 days." Lu Qing listened with anticipation. He nodded and smiled. "Thank you for your advice, sect leader Martial Uncle." Chapter 614. After lunch, Lu Qing walked out of the sect with a bag full of clothes and martial arts shoes. Breathing in the cool mountain breeze, he saw the commercial car waiting for him. He sat in the back seat and leaned back leisurely. He took out his phone and sent a message to Yenjika. Snickering emoji, "I'm going to see the Polar Laboratory of the Wiyue Club." Yenjika had just finished her training and washed off her sweat. She sat at the table in a knee-length red dress, waiting anxiously for the food. When she saw this message, she seemed to have thought of something and suddenly burst out laughing. She laughed so hard that she trembled slightly and subconsciously covered her mouth with her hand. After calming down, she replied seriously, "Not bad. I feel like the Polar Laboratory suits you very well." "Really?" Lu Qing asked in confusion. He didn't understand Ka's logic. Yenjika sent an emoji of holding her chin and rolling her eyes. "Of course. Have you heard of the 3 idiots in the sleigh? So you're calling me an idiot in a roundabout way." Lu Qing was enlightened. Yenjika turned her head to the side out of habit and saw herself smiling like a flower on the smooth marble pillar. She almost forgot about her hunger and began to seriously discuss the possible situation of the Polar Laboratory with Lu Qing. She only put down her phone when the lunch was served. She took small bites of her food elegantly but at a high frequency. When the scenery outside the car returned to the scorching heat of early autumn, the girl curled up on the sofa after a full meal and unknowingly fell asleep. Lu Qing locked his phone, closed his eyes, and quickly fell asleep. He took a short nap. After 20 minutes, the Wiyue Club was in sight. The driver slowed down and turned to the main entrance. He was about to wake Lu Qing up when he saw him open his eyes. His eyes were dark and deep, like a bottomless pool. He didn't look confused at all. "Uncle Lu, we're here." The driver was stunned for a few seconds and said softly, "Sorry to trouble you." Lu Qing said politely. The car door opened automatically. He closed his connection with the outside world, carried the bag, and walked out steadily. A man in a suit and leather shoes came up to him. The Wiyue Club had great greenery. If there wasn't a sign, most people would think that it was a golf course. There were quite a few buildings with 3 to 5 floors scattered like pearls. It was quite natural. "Hello, Mr. Lu. I'm Su Chen, one of the supervisors in the association. Sect leader, he told me about you yesterday. I've already arranged your schedule into the laboratory's timetable," this man in his 30s said enthusiastically with a bit of reservation. Lu Qing thanked him with a smile and followed Su Chen. They went past the first white building and walked to the largest building near the lake. Along the way, they only met a few staff members. The grass was green and the wind, it was quiet and comfortable. "This is the place where we entertain our guests." That building near the lake. "The castle is for the physical invulnerability, President Huang Ku." The building near the lake. Lu Qing listened attentively and nodded from time to time in response to the staff's greetings. Inside the training ground for the inhuman members. Lei Fong turned into the north wind and made a few high-speed turns. Then, he came to a stop and observed the steps he had taken just now while panting slightly. After a whole morning of hard training, even with some sleep and rest, he still felt tired. His body wasn't in its best condition. If it was in the past, he would have definitely chosen to stop and not be in a hurry to succeed. But now, looking at Jingyu, Qian Chiyue, Wu Xiaoyan, Xiao Jianliang, and the others, and seeing how hard they worked, Lei Feng could not help but extinguish the thought of leaving. He once again immersed himself in the monotonous and tedious daily cultivation. He even found a specialized trainer to train himself. Everyone here was sprinting to make the great leap. He couldn't fall behind. Coming to the north, Lu Qing finally saw the polar laboratory after passing through a few postmodern metal doors. Of course, this was only a part of it. The laboratory covered an area of more than 1,000 square meters and was divided into 2 layers. The outer layer was made up of a few sections. There was the source room to create ultra-low temperatures, a huge computer to control the various parameters of the polar regions, a panel to display different data, and so on. It was as though he had entered the world of science fiction. The inner layer was relatively simple. Looking through the observation window, it was about 500 square meters. Other than the silver-white walls, tiny holes visible to the naked eye, and faintly discernible lines and pipes, there was nothing else. The 2 researchers in white coats didn't leave their seats. They were waiting for Su Chen's announcement. Su Chen thought for a while and said, "Mr. Liu, shall we set the temperature to -75 degrees Celsius? This is a relatively low temperature in the real polar regions. In addition to the random simulated snowstorm, it can be as low as -90 degrees Celsius." At this point, he explained with a smile, the laboratory can reach -120 degrees Celsius, -150 degrees Celsius, or even lower. But it's mostly used for short-term stimulation to help the human body recover. In such an environment, even a physical invulnerability mighty one can't stay for too long. They have to come out after training for a while. Oh right, there's an emergency button inside. If you can't hold on any longer, you can notify the outside. This was Lu Cheng's first experience, so he didn't know much about it. He smiled and said, "Okay, I'll leave it to you." "Okay." Su Chen turned and walked to the control room. He told the lab staff the general requirements. After a while, the polar regions took shape. All the parameters were met. A staff member opened the complicated sealed door and invited Lu Qing in. Lu Qing put down his bag, phone, and wallet. At first glance, he saw that the interior was clean and pure. There was no smoke or fog. But the moment he stepped in, he immediately felt a bone-piercing chill. As he breathed, the mucous membranes in his throat seemed to be frostbitten. At this moment, he was wearing a thin summer martial arts suit. Hearing that the cabin was sealed shut, Lu Qing exhaled. He released the restraints on his mind between his eyebrows. Instantly, he felt that every pore and every cell in his body had come alive. He connected with the low temperature of the polar regions and felt as comfortable as a fish that had returned to the water. This was the first time Lu Qing could clearly feel the connection between himself and the environment. His body and mind felt happy. He sat down cross-legged and started visualizing to stabilize the channel of communication. He originally thought that this place would only improve his sensitivity to the extreme cold. But after treating his surroundings as the darkness of the universe, the scene in his mind changed naturally. All that was left was the heavy great sun that dispelled the low temperature and illuminated the surroundings. Around Lu Qing, white gas gradually swirled, forming a domain of decreasing temperature in a small area. The closer it was to his body, the closer it was to his normal temperature. 30 minutes later, a sudden gust of wind blew in the room. It swept up heavy snow as if it was polar. Lu Qing slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the wind and snow that covered his tracks, he gradually understood. He got up and started practicing his moves with his fists and legs. Outside the laboratory, Su Chen stayed in the break room. He lit a cigarette, poured himself a glass of water, and started playing with his phone while waiting for Lu Qing to come out. An hour passed quickly. He glanced at his watch and walked out of the room, puzzled. He went to the observation window and saw that the wind and snow were everywhere. Lu Cheng's figure was faintly discernible as he circled around faster and faster. SSS. Su Chen took a deep breath. He shifted his gaze away from the observation window and returned to the break room. He sighed to himself. Lu Cheng lived up to his reputation. He sat down again and tried his best to focus on his phone. However, he still looked outside from time to time to see if Lu Cheng had come out. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour. Su Chen finally couldn't take it anymore. He walked to the observation window and bent down slightly to look inside. At this time, the wind and snow had stopped. Lu Cheng was sitting cross-legged. There wasn't a trace of snow on his body. Is he okay? Su Chen turned to look at the laboratory staff in the control room. A man with neat bangs looked at the surveillance data and said, "What could be wrong with him?" "He's fine." Su Chen looked around in shock. He shifted his gaze back and forth between the control room and the observation window. He made a lot of guesses. He collected his thoughts and returned to the break room. He picked up his phone absent-mindedly. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Time passed quickly. Su Chen gradually became numb. All that was left was a blank expression. It wasn't until 5:25 in the afternoon that he heard the sealed door open. He rushed over and saw Lu Cheng walking out steadily with wet clothes. "Next time, set the ambient temperature to -90 degrees. Lu Cheng nodded thoughtfully and picked up his bag. Su Chen felt like he was struck by lightning. He was stunned for a moment before answering, "Okay." He followed Lu Cheng out of the polar laboratory like a zombie and instinctively led him to an exclusive break room. After Lu Cheng finished bathing and changing his clothes, he finally calmed down and asked, "Mr. Lu, would you like to have dinner here? The restaurant is right in front." Lu Cheng smiled and said, "No, I'll take care of it myself." Next, he had to taste the delicacies of Moshang. He had to prepare in advance for his vacation with Ku. "Okay." Su Chen didn't say anything else. He led Lu Cheng forward and approached the exit. At this time, Lei Fong, Jing Yu, and the others had rested for a while. With the help of a professional masseuse, they relaxed and headed to the restaurant to comfort their empty stomachs. Just as they reached the entrance of the restaurant, Lei Fong suddenly saw a familiar figure coming from another direction. He looked over and felt like he had been struck by lightning. He blurted out, "Junior Master." "What is Junior Master doing here?" Hearing Lei Fong's voice, Jingyu, Qian Chiyue, and the others looked over and saw Lu Cheng, whom they hadn't seen in a long time. They were shocked and puzzled. His face was rosy and he was walking steadily. He didn't look injured at all. "He's recovering well." They suddenly realized and confirmed Lu Cheng's declaration that he would fight in the martial arts world again in August or September. Lu Cheng smiled and nodded at Lei Fong. Seeing that he was in a daze and didn't have any intention of greeting him, Lu Cheng didn't bother. After greeting everyone, he walked past the restaurant and turned towards the entrance. Watching him leave, Jingyu asked Lei Fong, puzzled, "Why is your junior master here? Is he going to start with Wuyue Club?" Lei Fong shook his head and looked confused. "I don't know either." After sending Lu Cheng away, Su Chen took out his phone and made a call. After a while, the call went through. He greeted respectfully, "Hello, Mr. Zhang." "Hello, Assistant Zhang." Lu Cheng left, asked Zhang Juetao, Gun King Huang Ku's assistant. He glanced at Huang Ku in the car and saw the silent Gun King with his eyes closed as though he was taking a nap. Su Chen pulled himself together and said with a fawning smile, "He just left." He spent almost 4 hours in the polar laboratory in the afternoon. It was -75 degrees Celsius. He recounted the events that he had experienced and was very confused about. -75 degrees Celsius. Almost 4 hours. Zhang Juetao was in a daze, wondering if he had heard wrongly. He subconsciously tilted his head and looked at Huang Ku. He didn't know when, but Gun King had opened his eyes. His gaze was deep. It said that with such a serious injury, there will be long-term sequelae. Even if his body fully recovers, his strength won't be able to return to its peak in a year or so. Jingyu picked up the cup of water and took a sip. She agreed. Also, being able to play in the pro league and fully recovering are two different things. She put down her cup and suddenly said, however, Lu Cheng is still very young. He still has plenty of time to solve the follow-up problems and enough years to try to make the great leap. Speaking of which, his chances are greater than mine and yours. It can't be helped. Comparisons are odious. Qian Qiue agreed with his senior sister's judgment. He spread his hands and said self-deprecatingly, "This is the heavenly son of the era. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse." Jingyu was about to say something else when she suddenly saw a figure standing on the balcony next door from the corner of her eye. She took a closer look and whispered in shock, "Master." Qian Qiue followed her gaze and looked out of the window. Sure enough, he saw Gun King Huangku standing on the edge of the balcony, almost blending into the darkness as he silently looked into the distance. "Master, what's wrong?" Qian Qiue whispered in confusion. His master always woke up early and went to bed early. At this time, he should have been in bed long ago. Jingyu retracted her gaze, not daring to look again. She shook her head in confusion. In the next 20 days, Lu Qing went to the Wiyue Club every 3 to 4 days to use the polar laboratory to help him train. Gradually, he endured the lower temperature. For the rest of the time, he comprehended the secret arts in the morning and accompanied Yan Zhike to tour the mountains and rivers in the afternoon and at night. They strolled in the mountains and explored various delicacies. Sometimes, he would share the contents of his training notes that didn't involve the secret arts of the sect with his little fairy. After all, everyone was walking the path of cosmic starry sky that was balanced into Dan. These days were beautiful and fulfilling. In the blink of an eye, it was almost the end of August. Lu Cheng had grasped the basics of all 9 ice sect physical invulnerability moves. Of course, the so-called basics meant that he could leave the secret hall and the visualization diagram to train. Except for the Millennium Ice Wall, Enemy Heart Freezing move, Ice Spirit Holy Light, and Boundless Starry Sky, Absolute Frost, which had a solid foundation, the rest would take him 2 to 3 months to grasp the basics. The cultivation of physical invulnerability was heavy and long. This day, in the afternoon, in the polar laboratory, the monitoring screen in the outer control room showed the temperature inside, -136 degrees Celsius. This wasn't a shocking figure, as the ultra-low temperature cold treatment system, which was popular among the rich and powerful in professional competitions, could easily achieve this. However, users who received treatment or used it to recover from fatigue could only stay for a short period of time. If they stayed for too long, their lives would be in danger. At this moment, the monitoring data showed that the polar ground had been maintained for 27 minutes. Lu Qing stood on the cold, hard, silver-white floor. His heart was beating violently, spurting out hot blood with some fire force that traveled throughout his body. He felt that if he were to slow down by half a beat, his muscles would start to freeze, and his cells would start to freeze, one by one. He would become a veritable ice sculpture. His spirit was slowly retracting, and he had no strength to open his eyes. He was surrounded by darkness, an extremely cold darkness. At this moment, Lu Qing felt as though he was truly standing in the middle of the universe. His body was radiating light and heat, attempting to illuminate a region and warm life. Like a star, the two maintained a delicate balance. Only ice is eternal, darkness is the final destination, and all heat will eventually be extinguished. Such a thought suddenly appeared in Lu Cheng's mind. He raised his almost frozen right hand and pressed the round button that required him to open the sealed door. After a short while, he walked out of the polar ground with his own strength. Thump. 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 His heart was beating more and more violently, allowing his body to slowly and steadily recover from its nearly frozen state. The fatigue in his body seemed to have been expelled. After recovering, Lu Qing asked for his own data report, took a hot shower, and changed into clean and fresh clothes. Every martial artist who used the Polar Ground Laboratory would leave behind monitored data. However, this was a secret, and the experimenters had no right to see it unless they had the permission of the martial artist. From the second time, Su Chen didn't wait outside. He would only come over when it was almost over. Today, Lu Qing ended early and didn't try more. Therefore, he slowly walked through the corridor of the Wiyue Club building and walked out of this quiet and cool place. At the entrance, a fiery red car rolled down the window, revealing Yan Jika's beautiful face. She pursed her lips and smiled, waving her hand playfully. "Hey, are you alone?" Little Fairy's imitation of a pickup line was not at all convincing. Lu Qing shook his head and laughed. "You should say that. Hey, do you have a date?" Yan Jika's eyes flashed as she glared at him. She slapped the seat beside her and said, "Are you getting in or not? If not, I'm leaving." Today was the day they returned to Shushan. This is a tyrant's promise. Lu Qing went to the other side, opened the door, and got in. As for the luggage, of course, it had been packed long ago. Back in Shushan, the couple went to their own homes. Lu Qing just took out the key to open the door when he heard his mother's nagging, "You brat, why didn't you come home when you were in danger on a trip? Why did you stay in Wiyue for so long?" Lu Qing chuckled and said, "Didn't I break through? I went to the sect to stabilize my state and practice new martial arts. Yes, my connection with heaven and earth is stable now. I'm a real physical invulnerability expert." Breakthrough? Qi Fang didn't understand for a moment. Lu Jisheng, who was casually changing the channel, raised his head. He didn't have time to push his gold-rimmed glasses and blurted out, "You're a physical invulnerability expert?" Even an ordinary family, after so many years of influence, knew the meaning of carp leaping over Dragon Gate. "You're a physical invulnerability expert?" Qi Fang asked like a repeater. How did he become a physical invulnerability expert in such a short time? "Yeah." Lu Qing smiled and threw his new backpack on the sofa. He told his parents what had happened. Of course, he left out the parts that were too exciting and frightening. "Huh, not bad, not bad." Qi Fang was too excited. Even after racking her brain, she could only come up with this one word. Lu Jisheng picked up his personal thermos and sipped tea to hide his emotions. However, after drinking for a long time, he only drank tea leaves. He forgot to add water. Not bad. In the end, he was possessed by Qi Fang and only said these two words. When he calmed down, Qi Fang asked with concern, "Cheng, you're already a physical invulnerability expert. Are you still going back to the Longhu Club?" "Yes," Lu Qing said cheerfully. "Dragon King called me a while ago to ask about it." I agreed. Without any hesitation, he said that he would go after stabilizing his state and mastering the Ice Sect's physical invulnerability chapters. They would talk about the contract then. That's good. That's good. Lu Jisheng sighed. I met that kid from the Wang family 2 days ago. He has been away for almost half a year. He opened a snack bar with Shushan specialties near a shopping mall in Gaofen. Business is good. In the big city, no one collects protection fees. He can sell for 2,000 to 3,000 yuan a day. You guys are all grown up. After hearing about Wang Su's situation, Lu Qing, who couldn't contact him, felt relieved. That's good. That's good. On the evening of August 30th, in Yan Jika's bedroom, the couple covered themselves with an air-conditioned blanket and talked about how they would go their separate ways tomorrow. You're a physical invulnerability expert now. Will it be difficult to get a visa? Yan Jika looked up and asked worriedly. Lu Qing chuckled and said, I asked. I can still get one, but I can't go over for no reason. I can't stay for too long either. As Yan Jika was returning to Connecticut the next day, he got permission from his parents-in-law to stay in the guest room. Taking advantage of the dark and windy night, he sneaked over to his wife's side to sleep. Okay, I'll cherish every holiday. Yenjika bit her pink lips lightly. After going through so much, they were pretty sure about each other. The next day, after sending off his little fairy girl, Lu Qing went to the departure hall in China. He arrived in Huaqing at 3 in the afternoon. He didn't inform the club's assistant to pick him up. He carried his luggage and hailed a taxi. Passing through the familiar yet unfamiliar streets, he appeared outside the Longhu Club once again. The scenery here didn't seem to have changed. After paying the fare, Lu Qing stood at the entrance. He took a deep look at the dragon coil and tiger crouching plaques, smiled, and walked in. P.S. Third update for you. Looking for recommendation and monthly tickets on Monday. Chapter 6:16. Lu Qing wasn't a reckless person. After he got off the plane, he gave Dragon King and Empress Luo a call so that the club wouldn't catch him off guard. After confirmation, Dragon King had gone to the military base, but Empress Luo was in her office. Unwilling to wait, Lu Qing declined Ning Zidong's offer to send a member of the assistant team to pick him up. Instead, he took a taxi to Longhu Club. With a smile on his face, he stepped through the door. Under the shocked gazes of the security guards in the guardhouse, he followed the pattern of the dark-colored tiles and walked through the wide corridor. He stopped at the elevator door and habitually didn't register. The security guards also habitually let him in. Ding dong. When the elevator on the left arrived, the metal doors opened. A tanned, skinny young man with a parted hairstyle walked out slowly. He was Huang Bin from the assistant team. He had his head down and was flipping through the documents in his hands. Just as he left the car, he sensed something and instinctively looked up at the guest who was about to take the elevator. Mr. Lu. Huang Bin recognized Lu Qing and got a shock. The documents in his hands fell to the ground and scattered. Long time no see. Lu Qing chuckled and helped Huang Bin catch the documents. His palm didn't look special, but it seemed to cover the surroundings and didn't let a single piece of paper fall to the ground. Sure, long time no see. Huang Bin received the documents in a daze. Talk to you later. Lu Qing stepped into the elevator and nodded. Huang Bin nodded hurriedly and stared blankly as the metal doors closed. Just as Lu Qing reached the 5th floor, walked through the corridor, and knocked on Empress Luo's office door, news of his sudden appearance in the club had already spread through the airwaves. What? Lu Qing is here? In the assistant team's office, Amen and the rest were shocked. Lu Qing is here at the club? Asked the valiant Lu Xiaofei in the reserve team's training ground. She looked at the masculine and tough leader, Tu Zheng. Tu Zheng frowned and said, someone from the assistant team saw him. A year had passed, but he was still stuck at the level close to physical invulnerability. The pressure on him was getting stronger and stronger. Many of those who were as famous as him had yet to make the breakthrough. Only Go Wen of the Xuanwu sect and Meng Liang of the Shizhou Island had succeeded. Regardless of whether it was Ji Ren of the Daxing Temple, Ming Shi of the Shangqing sect, Qing Feng of the Shushan study, or Wang Xian of the Yanzhao sect, they were all still stuck. The Dragon's Gate was not so easy to leap over. He's really going to return to the Pro League. The muscular and round-faced Yu Wangyuan said thoughtfully. Lu Xiaofei nodded and said, it seems that his sequela has been resolved. With his momentum back then, without this 1 year of delay, who knows what level he would be at now. Sun Jianlin, who was like a passerby, said with some emotion. Jiao Lu, who had been watching the show from the sidelines, rolled her watery eyes and chuckled. No matter what, he's back. I thought it would be the low-level professional league players who came back first. Tu Zheng relaxed his eyebrows and spoke with the authority of a captain. Since he's back, he's still our teammate. Try not to mention anything about his injuries. Also, no matter what he went through, I believe that his foundation is still there. All of you, including me, have to buck up and not lose to him. As young high-pin players, Lu Xiaofei, Yu Wangyuan, and the rest were naturally competitive. Hearing this, they replied loudly, "Yes, Captain too." Knock, knock, knock. Lu Qing knocked rhythmically on Ning Zitong's office door. He heard a clear voice, "Come in." He opened the door and stepped in. He saw Ning Zitong sitting behind a dark red desk. Her hair was down and draped over her shoulders. Her facial features were beautiful and elegant. Taking a deep look at Lu Qing, Ning Zitong shook her head and smiled. "Your generation of heavenly sons of the era really lives up to their name. None of you fell behind. 2 of them made the great leap at the age of 23, and 2 of them achieved physical invulnerability at the age of 22. As for the living Buddha, there was no need to mention him. Renli turned 22 in July, about 5 months younger than Lu Qing. Of course, she started martial arts much earlier. Everyone worked very hard." As Empress Luo wasn't just praising him, she was also praising Priest and Chihuahua. Lu Qing couldn't be humble and could only reply casually. As they had returned from Nile late, Peng Liyun and Renli were still practicing their respective sex physical invulnerability chapters. They hadn't officially announced their promotions to the public. Ning Zitong leaned back and curled her lips into a smile. "When I first heard about your breakthrough from the Dragon King, I almost thought that he had finally learned how to joke after 30 years. In the end, sigh, I'm old now. I can't keep up with you youngsters. What's even worse is that this kid didn't even rely on external help. He broke through the bottleneck and made the great leap on his own." Without waiting for Lu Qing's reply, she stood up and said, "Let's go to the core team to meet our future teammates. As for the contract, I'll get your lawyer to discuss it later. You won't be mistreated." "Sure." Lu Qing didn't seem to care much and smiled. In the reserve team's practice field, Yu Wangyuan, who was doing relaxation exercises, said casually, "Lu Qing is back again. Lu Qing has returned to the team. Should we hold another welcome banquet?" "There's no need for that. Isn't this a reminder to him?" Lu Xiaofei shook her head and replied. She continued with anticipation, "I wonder how much he has recovered. Leader 2, why don't we bring forward the practice to tomorrow?" Her words made Jia Lu, Sun Jianlin, and the rest eager to give it a try. Tu Jing finished his training. He held his phone, thought for a while, and said, "Forget it. Let him get used to it for a few days." At this moment, his palm vibrated and a message came in. Tu Jing lowered his head and his expression changed. He blurted out, "Lu Qing has gone to the core team, him? A new teammate?" Long Zhen, who was called out by Empress Luo from the individual practice field, got a shock when he saw Lu Qing. When he heard that there was a new physical invulnerability expert joining, he racked his brains but couldn't figure out who it could be. He was filled with curiosity and questions. There were limited physical invulnerability experts. Even if they didn't know each other well, they were still familiar with each other. Long Zhen believed that if there was really someone who jumped ship, he would definitely have received news beforehand. As for those who had just broken through, there were only a few every year. Everyone was treated with respect. Not only was Long Zhen surprised, martial arts fanatic Gu Jia was also shocked. If Lu Qing had continued his momentum from a year ago, she would have believed it if he said that he had broken through to the physical invulnerability stage. However, he had been severely injured for a year and was tormented by the aftereffects for a long time. How did he suddenly make the great leap? Beside her, the team member cum coach, Lu Yan's eyes flickered. He sized Lu Qing up in shock and doubt. He was middle-aged, but his hair was already half white. His facial features were handsome and chiseled. However, one could sense his arrogance just by looking at his face. In the past, because the Dragon King gave Lu Qing the exceptional treatment of a quasi-physical invulnerability expert, he had always avoided this heavenly son of the era. Ning Zitong was satisfied with the current outcome. She laughed pleasantly. He broke through in Nile at the beginning of August. After she finished speaking, she looked at Lu Qing and raised her chin, indicating that she was ready to go. Lu Qing smiled and took half a step forward. He opened his mind and showed the connection. Instantly, the surroundings darkened and a chill seeped into his bones. At the same time, sparks of fire appeared one after another, warming the surroundings. Seeing this, Lu Yan, Long Zhen, and Guojie no longer had any doubts. However, they were caught in their own emotions and were momentarily speechless. Impressive, impressive. To be able to break through after a year of severe injuries and delay, you are indeed impressive. Long Zhen was the first to give a thumbs up. I have the Dragon King in front of me and the army behind me. It's really not easy to become the leader of the club. He would never ignore the results of others and would sincerely praise them. However, he would never admit defeat and would not allow others to easily surpass him. If not for the past year of severe injuries and delay, I might have needed another 2 to 3 years, or even 4 to 5 years to break through. I might even never break through. Lu Qing thought to himself calmly. Guojie's eyebrows relaxed. She nodded and said, "Let's spar later." As expected of the martial arts fanatic. Lu Qing laughed to himself. Lu Yan, on the other hand, maintained his dignity and nodded. I have indeed underestimated you back then. Since you have made the great leap, you are fully deserving of being a member of the core team. At this moment, Ning Zidong flipped her wrist and looked at her watch. All right, I'll bring him to meet the reporters. They should be here by now. After Lu Qing got off the plane and called, she instructed the Foreign Affairs team to contact the various media outlets in Huaqing. In the Longhu Club's conference room, the Foreign Affairs team had completed the preparations for the press conference. They say it has something to do with Lu Qing? A reporter turned to ask his colleague. The girl with chestnut red hair nodded. That's what I heard too. Lu Qing previously announced that he would be able to return to the arena in 4 to 5 months. That was the beginning of April. It's about time now. Did he join the Longhu Club again? The reporter who asked the question first guessed. He wore narrow-rimmed spectacles and was very fashionable. That's a good word for again. Another cultured reporter laughed. Lu Qing is going back to being Mrs. Feng. This idiom meant returning to one's old profession. It's a pity that Lu Qing has been delayed for a year. He has fallen out of the ranks of the heavenly sons of China. The female reporter with chestnut red hair sighed. At this moment, Ning Zidong and Lu Qing entered the conference room and sat behind the podium. This isn't important enough. There's only Empress Luo here. The reporter with narrow-rimmed spectacles sensed the abnormality. The cultured reporter nodded in agreement. Indeed. Lu Qing hasn't changed much. He's just more reserved. At this moment, Lu Qing had already changed into the navy blue Longhu Club martial arts suit. He looked steady and masculine, without a hint of a student's aura. Ning Zidong raised her hand to signal for silence. She smiled and said, I'm the only one accompanying Lu Qing this time because he no longer needs the support of physical and vulnerability experts. He already has the qualifications to sit here. Click, click, click. The cameras flashed continuously. The reporters quickly recorded Empress Luo's words, but they didn't understand the true meaning behind them. Ning Zidong cleared her throat and continued. I'm going to announce something now. Lu Qing has rejoined the Longhu Club and officially entered the core team. Indeed, he's rejoining the Longhu Club. The reporters were stunned at first. They split up and took notes. Then, they realized that there was something wrong with those words. They jerked their heads up and shifted their focus back and forth between Ning Zidong and Lu Qing. Core team. Official member of the core team of the Longhu Club? P.S. Looking for recommendation tickets and monthly tickets. Chapter 617. To the various media outlets, core team was what the Longhu Club called themselves and used in official reports. Most of the time, it had a more popular, more widely known, and more accepted nickname. Physical and Vulnerability Team. Any official member of this team was a physical invulnerability mighty one who had made the great leap. Connecting the dots, the meaning of Empress Luo was. The reporters retracted their gazes and looked at each other excitedly. Some were confused, some were at a loss, and some were excited. It was as though they had caught the scent of big news. Is it true? Did Lu Qing really make the great leap and reach the heavens? But he had just recovered from a serious injury a year ago. How could he become a physical invulnerability expert? His low point back then could be proven by his occasional Weibo posts. A comeback and a promotion seemed like two completely unrelated matters. Their eyes kept meeting. Because the news was too sudden, too shocking, and too unbelievable, the reporters forgot to raise their hands to ask questions. They were afraid that their guesses would make a fool of themselves. After a few seconds, someone finally stood up. A female reporter with chestnut red hair looked at Ning Zitong and asked in a trembling voice, Empress Luo, do you mean that Lu Qing made the great leap and became a physical invulnerability expert? The moment she said that, the reporters held their breaths. The conference room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Ning Zitong looked around and smiled elegantly. Yes. With a boom, the entire conference room was in an uproar. The reporters whispered into each other's ears. They couldn't stop discussing. Oh my God, he just recovered. Was the news of his injury fake? No matter how fake it was, he wouldn't post a farewell on Weibo. Let me do the math. According to Lu Qing himself, there was hope for him to recover in July or August. In other words, he used a month to become a physical invulnerability expert. This is the speed of a living Buddha. After letting the reporters talk for a while, Ning Zitong smiled and said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. The main character is here. There aren't many chances. The female reporter with chestnut red hair took advantage of the fact that she was still standing and looked at Lu Qing excitedly. Mr. Lu Qing, may I know when you made the great leap? They didn't doubt the authenticity of the news. After all, Empress Luo's appearance at the press conference was equivalent to endorsing the Longhu Club's reputation. Moreover, Lu Qing would definitely participate in top professional competitions and title matches in the future. Even if he could hide it for a while, he couldn't hide it forever. Lu Qing shifted the microphone and answered frankly, early August. Boom! The conference room exploded once again. Every reporter was extremely excited. The reporter with narrow-rimmed glasses raised his hand and stood up. He hurriedly asked, when did you recover from your previous injury? How did you get injured? Lu Qing ignored the latter question and calmly recalled, actually, I recovered at the beginning of the year, but there were some sequelae. In order to solve this problem, I made an attempt in March. You can treat it as a surgery. This attempt was very successful, and I completely got rid of the injury. After recuperating, I fully recovered by the end of June. In other words, you've made the great leap from the inhuman stage to the physical invulnerability stage in just a month? The cultured reporter stood up and asked. He had already thought of his headline. If Lu Qing answered yes, he would say, comparable to the living Buddha. If not, he would say, unbelievable. Lu Qing pursed his lips, deliberated over his words, and answered with a sigh and a smile, you can't say that. Actually, I'm very grateful for this injury and the low point of the past year. It allowed me to truly find my own path. It allowed me to see my heart clearly, strengthen my will, and accumulate enough experience to break through to the physical invulnerability stage. This was the key to making the great leap. He didn't drop the book, but a sentence he learned in the past flashed across his mind. The sharpness of a sword comes from grinding, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. This line of words is pretty smooth. He didn't deny it, but he didn't confirm it either. The cultured reporter thought to himself. He planned to ask another question to enrich the content of his article. However, at this moment, he noticed from the corner of his eye that almost all the text reporters were writing furiously. It was obvious that they had started writing news articles in an attempt to snatch the headlines. This bunch of B** cheese. The cultured reporter threw away his question, thanked him hurriedly, and sat down to edit the content. Core team. Hearing Tu Zheng's words, the heroic Lu Xiaofei raised her voice. This was the place of her dreams, the goal of her dreams. However, it was so far away. Sun Jianlin was also puzzled. He frowned and asked, "Are you going to pay a visit to a physical invulnerability expert again?" According to the rules, there should be such a process, even though this was the second time the other party had joined. Tu Zheng retracted his expression and couldn't help but turn solemn. Empress Luo and the rest have never liked complicated formalities. It was clear what he was implying. Things weren't that simple. Yuan and the rest opened and closed their mouths. They fell silent. They already had a guess in their hearts, but they didn't dare to believe the answer. You must be kidding. Lu Qing might not be able to do that even if he was healthy for a year, let alone being heavily injured for a year. In the stifling silence, Yuan spoke in a deep voice. Perhaps Lu Qing has really become a physical invulnerability expert. How can that be possible? Tu Zheng's speech was getting slower and slower, and his voice was getting softer and softer. It was as though he wasn't willing to face it, but he had to admit it. Jia Lu stopped looking at him like a bystander and sighed with a smile. You don't say. I think it's true. He's a heavenly son of the era who creates miracles time and time again. Perhaps he has profited from his misfortune. Tu Zheng opened his mouth and was about to speak again when he suddenly received another message from Optimus Prime, Longzhen. He scanned the message again and again, and again, and again. Finally, he believed that he wasn't hallucinating. After a few seconds of silence, he lowered his head and said, Lu Qing has become a physical invulnerability expert. These 5 simple words reverberated in the training field of the reserve team, giving off a feeling that they were as heavy as 1,000 kilograms. There was another moment of silence. Lu Xiaofei stared blankly ahead. Her mind was in a mess, and she didn't know what she was thinking about. Yuan was stunned at first, then shook his head and smiled bitterly. He shook his head again and again. Sun Jianlin took a deep breath and wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words. Jia Lu was also focused on the green brick in front of her. The patterns on it seemed to be filled with artistic beauty. She suddenly laughed softly and mumbled to herself, all right, now I don't have to be afraid of being left behind by him. Yes, there's no point in comparing a physical invulnerability expert to an inhuman expert. They had been left far behind, to the point where they couldn't even see the back of the other party. Yuan smiled bitterly and said, some people are born to attack others. My self-confidence has been destroyed by him. Tu Zheng, Lu Xiaofei, and the rest were silent again. Although they didn't want to admit it, they didn't want to lie to themselves. In the new campus of Songqing University, Yan Shaoling, who was in her last year of university, stood by the window of the dormitory. She looked at the looming Weishui Lake in the distance and felt a little sad. She wanted to say a beautiful and elegant sentence, but when the words reached her mouth, she changed her mind. This water thief is King clean. If the school had this money, it would be great to subsidize the canteen. At this moment, her phone on the study table vibrated and rang continuously, as if urging her to do something. Who is it? Yan Shaoling muttered to herself, walked quickly to her bed, and picked up her phone. She glanced at it and saw that Brahman had sent voice messages one after another. Did something big happen? Yan Shaoling unlocked the screen in confusion. During her last summer break, she entered the terminal stage of laziness. She even rarely appeared in the QQ group because she was too lazy to type or speak. She clicked on the voice message and put it to her ear. Yan Shaoling was almost deafened by Brahman's sharp voice, Little Chanya, Little Chanya, Little Chanya. Look at the news. Look at the news. Look at the news. Quick. 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 Seriously, she's already a girl in her second year of high school, yet she's still so unreserved and childish. Yan Shaoling secretly mocked Brahman, who was almost 20 centimeters taller than her. She opened Weibo and browsed the headlines. A few seconds later, the familiar name and exaggerated title were reflected in her eyes. Lu Qing ascends to heaven, comparable to living Buddha. Returning from tribulation, Lu Qing attains physical invulnerability. Misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. The heavenly son of the era lives up to his name. What's going on? What's going on? Yan Shaoling was stunned. She quickly opened the news and browsed the content. Longhu Club held a press conference to announce that Lu Qing has rejoined the core team. Yan Shaoling read the opening sentence and finally understood what had happened. She suddenly burst into tears. She had been holding it in for a long time. Then, she smiled and paced back and forth excitedly. She even hummed the lyrics, "I've waited so long for this day." She cried and laughed, laughed and cried. After a few cycles, Yan Shaoling sat on the chair in a daze with a silly smile, as if she had lost her mind. It wasn't until Mu Jinyan came in and patted her head that Yan Shaoling came back to her senses. She logged into the forum and saw that everyone was in an uproar. Seriously, I can't express my feelings with words," said Unparalleled Dragon King, in a rare state. Niechichi posted, jumping, "Wife, come out and look at God." Oh my God, is this what you call a damaged potential? This kind of damaged potential, I want it too, laughed, all the good names are taken by dogs. Just as Yan Shaoling joined in their celebration, Poison Milk Hierarch, He Xiaowei was browsing the relevant Weibo. He found that everyone was discussing how Lu Qing could make the great leap so quickly. They were all emotional and excited. Having suffered a few setbacks due to Lu Qing, He Xiaowei had learned his lesson. He chose to wait and see when it came to matters related to him. Yes, now is the time. He typed satisfactorily and posted on Weibo, "I feel that the focus of everyone's discussion is not right. Let's guess how many years Lu Qing will take to get his first title. P.S. Looking for monthly votes and recommendation votes." Chapter 618. After posting on Weibo, He Xiaowei took a sip of water. When he refreshed the page, he saw many replies. "It's over. I'm afraid Lu Qing will never get a title in his lifetime." To the one above, "Have you forgotten about the supernatural ability to reflect poison healers? I'm not sure about other things, but I'm sure Lu Qing won't get one this year." At the one above, "Why? Isn't it obvious? It's already September. Out of the 5 major title competitions, only the finals are left, and Lu Qing can't participate out of nowhere. The main competition is this year, and the finals next year. He won't get one even if he wants to. Cough, as a loyal fan of my idol, I think it's better to accumulate some good karma. Wisdom King took 3 years. Our Lu Qing should take 3 years too. Speaking of which, I'm reminded of Living Buddha. He doesn't have a title yet." Seeing the heated discussion, some even began discussing what title Lu Qing should use if he were to win the Battle of the Kings. He Xiaowei lifted his cup in satisfaction and gulped down a mouthful of water. As a human being, one must know when to yield and when not to back down. Take that all-knowing man in Jianghu for example. If he hadn't resisted back then, he would have taken off his face and kept it in his pocket. He wouldn't have fallen to the point where he couldn't get popular after changing a few accounts and had to leave the circle. In Weiwei Club, Lei Fong, who had just finished training, stood in the bathroom with his phone in his hand for a full 2 minutes. He was only wearing a pair of shorts, revealing his masculine muscles. He had planned to take a shower, but when he glanced at his phone, he forgot to turn on the faucet. Physical invulnerability, Lu Qing's physical invulnerability. These words echoed in Lei Fong's mind, making him realize what had happened. Martial Uncle Lu's sudden appearance in Weiwei Club and the use of the Polar Laboratory had the most direct and logical explanation. He had already attained physical invulnerability and was assisting in his training. However, who would have thought of this possibility? Even if such thoughts had flashed through his mind, he would have denied it, laughed at himself, and racked his brains to come up with a more reasonable answer. Who knew that some things just don't make sense? The world is big, and there are all kinds of strange things. Some people were born to break the rules. After staring blankly for a long time, Lei Feng withdrew his gaze, took a deep breath, and slowly exhaled. Facing such a person, he felt that he had lost his passion for practicing martial arts. He might not be able to succeed even if he trained hard for 3 to 5 years, but the other party succeeded so easily. In comparison, what was the point of putting in effort? What was the point of training more than 4 hours every day? Disappointment and dejection surged into Lei Feng's heart. Hundreds of thoughts ran through Lei Feng's mind. Finally, he turned on the faucet and buried his head under the cold water. Drip, 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 drip. He forced himself to get rid of his emotions and kept encouraging himself. Lei Feng knew very well what it meant to be a physical invulnerability expert. Just the qualitative change in status was enough for him to grit his teeth and persevere. Retracting his head and shaking off the water droplets, Lei Feng suddenly laughed bitterly. Physical invulnerability was the boundary between a fish and a dragon, but some people could easily cross it. In the practice field, Jingyu and Qianqiue were looking at their phones in silence for a long time. So he has reached physical invulnerability, Qianqiue said after a while. Hearing this, Jingyu raised her head and said with a hint of understanding, Master should have known long ago. He was probably thinking about this when he stood on the balcony that night. Did he feel that the new generation was better than the old and that the new generation was better than the old? Qianqiue had a lot of thoughts and emotions to express, but when the words came to his mouth, only one sentence remained. The gap is really huge. When Lu Qing won the youth tournament of Xing province and rose to fame, he was still a little unconvinced and competitive. But as the years passed, he was completely numb and had completely admitted defeat. He felt that he couldn't catch up no matter how hard he tried. He should be more realistic and rational. Jingyu glanced at him and suddenly said with a sigh, this makes me depressed, but also filled me with hope. Since Lu Qing made the leap so easily, it doesn't seem too difficult to reach physical invulnerability. That makes sense. Qianqiue's mouth twitched. He nodded and turned to leave the practice field. When he was about to leave, he suddenly heard Qianqiue murmur, but when we try, we might find that physical invulnerability is extremely difficult. The evening sun shone into the room and dyed it golden. Kai Zhongming's eyelashes, which were often ridiculed as girly, fluttered and his eyes slowly opened. Damn, why did I sleep for so long? He came back to himself and looked at the time on his phone. In the past 2 months, he had gradually taken over the family matters. He wasn't too busy and could still go on dates with Fang Yuan, who was on summer break. But because he was unfamiliar with many aspects, it caused a lot of stress. He was often tense and exhausted. He had planned to take a nap this afternoon, but it was already past 5. And in the evening, he had to attend a business cocktail party that he didn't want to attend. Lazily, he didn't want to get up. He said a few words to Fang Yuan and casually browsed the forum and Weibo. After more than a minute, his eyes suddenly lit up. He was surprised and happy, but also felt that this wasn't F*King scientific at all. After receiving a positive reply from Lu Qing, Kai Zhongming didn't rush to congratulate him. Instead, he sat up and looked out of the window with a smile. After a long time, he whispered to himself, dreams. The smile on his face widened. He got out of bed and put on his shirt, casual pants, tie, and suit. He put on some gel on his hair and looked at himself in the mirror energetically. Not bad, I look like a dog. Kai Zhongming praised himself. Then, he couldn't help but laugh. Damn, I even scold myself when I'm crazy. If Cheng heard this, he would definitely say that your crosstalk skills have improved. You can even perform monologues now. Jiangnan Province, Ji family's old house. With his hands behind his back, Ji Jianzhang paced back and forth. He was both happy and amused. Sure, Jiangwo, that old bastard, he didn't even mention such a good thing to me. He had gone to the war-torn zones and made arrangements for Lin, Quebec. He couldn't say for sure that his grandson was safe, but the chances of him encountering greater danger had been reduced to a very low level. He had just returned to China and already heard that his future grandson-in-law had made the great leap and achieved physical invulnerability. To think that he wanted to train him. Opposite him, Do Ning leaned comfortably on the recliner and scolded jokingly. That brat didn't even mention it. Does she think we're outsiders? What time is it in Connecticut? I'll call and scold her. Then again, this brat has good taste. She's even better than me back in the day. 3 or 4 in the morning, Ji Jianzhang answered uncertainly. Then we'll talk about it when she wakes up. Do Ning felt sorry for her precious granddaughter and decided to postpone the scolding. Just then, her phone rang. It was from Yan Zhika. Why aren't you sleeping in the middle of the night? Do Ning scolded as soon as she picked up the call. I just sneaked out of bed to watch the press conference, Yan Zhika replied with a grin. You still have the nerve to say that? Do Ning recalled her earlier mood. It's been almost a month since he made the great leap. You don't even know how to say a word to us. Yan Zhika laughed softly and explained in a light tone, hee, are you surprised? Are you surprised? After the press conference ended, Lu Qing went back to Empress Luo's office. Ning Zitong rested her chin on her hand lazily and moved the mouse casually. The club will give the core team members a villa or a high-rise mansion, all developed by the company. You can pick one later. If you're not satisfied with the location, you'll have to make do with it. In the future, you can sell or rent it if you want. Okay, I don't really care now, Lu Qing replied with a smile. His wife was overseas, so it didn't matter where he lived. As long as the house was soundproof, had all the essentials, didn't have leaks, and had hourly workers to help clean up from time to time, it was fine. Remember to get your lawyer to discuss the specific terms and conditions. During this time, you should focus on practicing the physical invulnerability chapters of the Fire Sect. You don't have to play professional matches with us for now. When you're almost ready, there will be a master battle at the end of October or the beginning of November. Physical invulnerability experts can participate directly. Hee, that will be your first appearance at the top level, Ning Zitong said with a smile. She added, when practicing the physical invulnerability chapters of the Fire Sect, you should consult Lu Yen. Although he's not as strong as the Dragon King, arrogant and stubborn, he has his own unique points when it comes to mastering the physical invulnerability chapters and teaching others. The Dragon King benefited a lot from him back then. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let such a bad-tempered person be the coach. Sister Ning, why do you have to insult Coach Lu every 3 sentences? Lu Qing said amusedly. Ning Zitong replied nonchalantly, that's the truth. At this point, she recalled something. Pick a daily assistant later. Leave the trivial matters to them and focus on practicing. Chapter 619. Okay. Lu Qing didn't intend to be unconventional and agreed casually. Seeing that everything was settled, Ning Zitong picked up the landline and made an internal call to inform the head of the logistics team to come over. She asked him to lead Lu Qing to the 5th floor to choose the exclusive rooms for physical invulnerability experts. Compared to when he was at the inhuman stage, the resting room was much bigger now. It was more than 100 square meters. After entering, it was a meeting area that doubled as an office. The lighting was excellent. There was a door on the right, and after pushing it open, one could see a short corridor. On the left and right of the corridor were bedrooms and study rooms. At the end of the corridor was a bathroom with a wet and dry section. The sound insulation was good. After Lu Qing chose a room where he could see the lake from the bedroom, he realized that the head of the logistics team had already set up his laptop. He started to introduce the villas and high-rise mansions in a slideshow format. At the end, he showed the information of the members of the assistant team and casually mentioned their personalities, hobbies, abilities, and other details. Of course, no one was completely objective. When it came to people he was familiar with, on good terms with, or people he had visited before, he couldn't help but praise them. After listening carefully, Lu Qing leaned back on the sofa and smiled. Let me think for a while. Can you send the information to my email? No need. I'll just leave my laptop here. Call me when you've made up your mind. Why don't we add each other on WeChat? Said the head of the logistics team with a smile. Sure. Lu Qing agreed readily and picked up his phone. After adding each other on WeChat, the head of the logistics team added, you don't have to rush. Think about it slowly. You can even go and take a look. After all, if you want to move in, you'll have to do a thorough cleaning. Before that, which 5-star hotel should I book for you? I'll stay here for the time being. It's pretty good. Lu Qing pointed to the bedroom on the left side of the corridor. After seeing the head of the logistics team leave, he packed up the information of the house and sent it to Yan Zhika offline. Which one do you like? Maybe it'll be our house in the future. Once chosen, the property rights would be transferred to his name. After sending it, he didn't expect a timely reply from his little fairy at around 4 in the morning. He looked at the chat history of a few groups and exchanged a few sarcastic words with Little Ming. At this moment, he found that the offline file was being received. Yan Zhika's profile picture became bright. Hand holding chin, eyes rolling, said, if I hesitate and don't know which building to choose, are you going to sleep under the overpass tonight? Why are you awake? Lu Qing replied with a shocked expression. Heh, this fairy knows that you have something to ask of me, Yan Zhika replied proudly. Lu Qing didn't expose the fact that she had woken up in the middle of the night to see the news of his return to the Longhu Club. He played along and expressed his astonishment, shock, and admiration. After the file was sent, the girl read it carefully for a while and communicated with Lu Qing from time to time. In the end, she reluctantly sent 3 pictures and said, these 2 villas and this penthouse all look good. I haven't seen it before, so I'm not sure, don't worry. I'll take some time tomorrow to take a look and do a live broadcast. Lu Qing answered resolutely. Yan Zhika replied with an emoji of covering her mouth, are you really going to sleep under the bridge tonight? I have an exclusive lounge. Lu Qing stood up and sent a video chat request. He sent the pictures of his bedroom, study, guest room, and bathroom. Not bad. Yan Zhika smiled mischievously. Then I'll think about it for a few more days. Oh right, help me choose an assistant. Here's the information. Lu Qing looked like a capable coach. Yan Zhika replied, eyes wide open expression, why do you need me to decide on such a small matter? I don't know who to choose anyway. I'm not familiar with most of them. Even if I know them, I don't know much about them. I might as well believe in Coach Yan's insight. Lu Qing replied with an evil smile. Since you asked so sincerely, I'll help you choose one seriously. Yan Zhika unzipped the file and browsed through the information. In less than 2 minutes, she replied, face serious expression, Amen. It's her. Why? Eyes wide open expression, asked Lu Qing. I only know her and that guy with the surname Huang. The rest of the information is about the same. Yan Zhika replied, face red expression, when you left Longhu, didn't she also send you a message of encouragement? This shows that she's not the kind of person who flatters the strong and tramples on the weak. She has a good heart. That time when she accompanied me to watch the documentary at the exhibition hall, her speech and manners were not bad either. She obviously knows when to advance and when to retreat. That's true. Lu Qing nodded slightly and replied with an evil smile expression, I thought you would choose a male assistant. Yan Zhika replied, clenching fist expression, I have confidence in you. Then, she added another sentence and deliberately sent an arrogant looking at the sky emoticon, saying, I have more confidence in myself. I'm a little fairy. Without waiting for Lu Qing's reply, she sent another message with an evil smile expression, when I was in Huacheng, if you needed extra training or were busy, I could take her shopping or something. It's not fun to be with a guy, that makes sense. Nodding expression, replied Lu Qing. It was inevitable for a normal person to have a female partner when they were looking for a job. As long as they maintained their integrity and limited their interactions to what they needed to do and did not do anything that could cause misunderstandings, they would not be afraid of gossip spreading. In the assistant team, the members who usually liked to interact with other offices had all returned, making it unprecedentedly orderly. They pretended to be calm, either typing furiously, pretending to communicate with the traffic team, or staring at the screen as if deep in thought. But every time they heard footsteps outside the door, they could not help but sit up straight and tense their backs. When they realized that it was not the supervisor, they would straighten their backs again. Among them, Huang Bin held a cup to his lips but had no intention of drinking. From time to time, he would turn his head to look at Amen, whose long hair draped over her shoulders. He had a vigilant and worried expression. Previously, when Lu Cheng was at the club, he communicated with her the most. He always felt that he was lacking a little. She was his biggest competitor. Luckily, the supervisor of the logistics team was from the same hometown and maintained a good relationship with him. He would definitely put in a few good words for him. Amen looked normal and was seriously working on the forms. However, the data was written and deleted, and rewritten. There was no progress at all. In her mind, all sorts of thoughts were going through her mind. They were divided into pros and cons and kept debating. Among all the members of the assistant team, I am the closest to Mr. Lu. The chances of him choosing me is very high. Come on, this is only superficial. It can't compare to the introduction of the logistics supervisor. No matter what, I have never done anything that Mr. Lu hated. I even comforted him when he was at his lowest. Stop dreaming. You won't get such a good thing. Sun Tingting was the most relaxed, but she was in an unusually bad mood. In the past, compared to Lu Cheng, she believed that Tu Zheng had a higher chance of making the great leap and would be faster. She was so focused on pleasing Tu Zheng that it was almost impossible for her to be chosen. I should have bet on both sides, she thought in frustration. To the members of the assistant team, being chosen by a physical invulnerability expert to be their daily helper was also a great leap forward. Tick, 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 tick. The clock on the wall of the office ticked away. Huang Bin and the rest finally heard the familiar footsteps of their supervisor. He was impatient and walked very fast. If he had something to do, he would break into a jog. All the members straightened their backs once again. Some of them subconsciously tightened their grip on their pens. The assistant team supervisor, Ouyangda, looked around and revealed a rare smile. Amen, come out for a moment. Follow me to meet Mr. Lu. Amen's mind went blank, but she stood up instinctively. Sun Tingting and the rest were either slumped in their seats or exhaling. Disappointment was written all over their faces. Huang Bin even crumpled the papers in front of him into a ball and threw it into the rubbish bin at the side. After a few seconds, Amen finally reacted. She hurriedly replied, "Okay, okay." As she spoke, she had already walked out of her seat excitedly and ran to the door. Even when she was standing beside Lu Cheng, she still felt like she was dreaming. "I'll be troubling you in the future." Lu Cheng smiled and greeted her. "Okay, no, it's what I should do." Amen stuttered but quickly regained her composure. She asked directly, "Mr. Lu, is there anything I need to take note of?" Lu Cheng thought for a moment and said, "I'm a rather boring person and don't like to chat. You have to learn how to entertain yourself." "I won't disturb you if there's nothing," Amen quickly expressed. Lu Cheng nodded slightly and said, "Help me choose a driver for the van. I'm not familiar with any of them. If you don't find one to your liking, get the human resources team to hire another one. I'll be staying in the club for the next few days. If there's anything, I'll send you a message." "Okay." Two reliable faces appeared in Amen's mind. When she was about to leave, she couldn't help but turn back and say, "Thank you," a few times. After confirming the driver, she got off work. Just as she was about to take the bus to the subway, she saw a silver van stop in front of her. The driver, Zhao Zhenhua, rolled down the window and smiled. "Assistant Amen, let me give you a ride." We'll be partners in the future. It's okay. What if Mr. Liu wants to use the van later? Amen immediately shook her head. I've already asked Mr. Liu. He won't be going out tonight. Besides, I have to go home, don't I? Zhao Zhenhua said with a smile. Amen nodded hesitantly. All right then. Although there was a traffic jam on the way, she still returned to her residence earlier than usual. She entered her own room. It was very small and cramped, with only enough space for a bed, a table, and a chair. The cabinets were all mounted on the wall. Sitting by the bed, Amen was still in a daze. She couldn't believe that she had become the personal assistant of a physical invulnerability mighty one. She subconsciously looked around and thought of a lot of things. The Longhu Club gave new members of the assistant team a salary of 4,500 renminbi, with an annual increase of a few hundred RMB. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either. However, in Huadu, fixed expenses such as rent, utilities, insurance, and pension took up a large portion of the budget. Even so, she still had to share the bathroom with many people. She had to queue when her stomach wasn't feeling well. Furthermore, she gave her parents 1,000 RMB every month, saying that it was for her dowry. She didn't have much money left to spend on skincare products, clothes, and online shopping. If the club didn't provide lunch, she might have had to scrimp. Once she became the personal assistant of a physical invulnerability mighty one, it was said that her basic salary would be 38,000 renminbi, and this was after deducting all taxes. In addition, there was also car allowance, meal allowance, equipment allowance, and the year-end bonus for the physical invulnerability mighty one's performance. Sometimes, this was the real deal. Amen slowly came to her senses. Many thoughts appeared in her mind, the most intense of which was, I want to rent a new apartment, one with a private bathroom. At this moment, she received a message from the logistics team. Xiaoman, come and get your room key tomorrow. The Sky Capital Garden is for you. The club will let you stay there for free. It has 3 bedrooms and a living room. It's about 100 square meters. It's all yours. After reading it word by word, Amen couldn't help but lie down on her side. She hugged her big white bear and rolled around on the bed. She felt refreshed and her vision brightened. Chapter 620. After spacing out for a while and letting her imagination run wild, Amen suddenly sat up. She found Ouyangda, the manager of the assistant team, on WeChat and asked him what she needed to take note of as a personal assistant of a physical invulnerability expert. She was excited, happy, and full of ambition. But at the same time, she was filled with a sense of crisis. She was afraid that if she didn't do a good job, all her previous efforts would go to waste and she would fall from grace again. Ouyangda needed to maintain a good relationship with the physical invulnerability experts. Naturally, he didn't want to offend their personal assistant. He told her everything he knew. At the end, he emphasized that the most important thing was to understand Lu Cheng's temperament. After all, every physical invulnerability expert had a distinct personality. She couldn't copy the experience of others. Otherwise, she would easily make mistakes. After thanking him sincerely, Amen stood up. She paced back and forth in the small space, thinking about what she needed to do at the moment. Mr. Liu has a habit of exercising in the morning. He lives in the club and isn't familiar with any training grounds at the moment. I wonder if the logistics team will treat Mr. Liu's breakfast attentively. Thoughts flashed through Amen's mind. She sat down abruptly and communicated with several other departments. She sent the information of the 24-hour training ground and the terrain of the forest by the lake to Lu Cheng via WeChat for him to choose from. Thank you. I was just about to ask you about this, replied Lu Cheng quickly. It's what I should do. Amen typed happily. She energetically adjusted her alarm clock so that she could wake up at 5:45 a.m. From now on, she had to adjust her sleeping schedule to match Mr. Liu's. She didn't want him to give her orders while she was still sleeping. I'll leave at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I'll take a cab to the club and supervise the kitchen preparations. Aman wasn't worried about the safety of taking a cab this early in the morning. Her destination was the Longhu Club. How bold would the driver have to be to take such a risk? In such top forces, even a weak-looking girl could have mastered the skill of dismantling a car with her bare hands. After booking a cab, Aman happily headed to the bathroom for a shower. Although she had to wait for a few minutes, she wasn't frustrated at all. She knew these days were over. After the shower, she took out the cleansing mask that she hadn't done in a long time and started taking care of herself seriously. She resisted the urge to tell her parents and best friends that she had become a personal assistant of a physical invulnerability expert. I'd better wait until I'm stable. After a quiet night, Lu Qing went to the lakeside as usual. He breathed in the fresh air and practiced the physical invulnerability chapters of the Ice Sect. By the time he was done with his training, lawyer Lin Xiukong, who had flown to watching the previous night, had arrived. After a short chat, one went to eat breakfast, while the other went to face the joint team of the Foreign Affairs team, HR team, and legal team. Glutinous rice cake, Yunshui water, Shushan special zongzi. Lu Qing was very satisfied with the breakfast in the special restaurant. He couldn't help showing off to his wife and sent her several edited pictures. Yan Jika used to take pictures with his mobile phone. She complained that he didn't even have a beauty filter, so she downloaded a bunch of similar apps, including the kind that specialized in taking pictures of food. After receiving a hard knock on the head, Lu Qing put away his phone and walked towards the door. However, he saw Lin Xiukong returning with a smile. "You're done?" Lu Qing asked in surprise. "There's nothing to argue about. I've already given them what they deserve. How would they dare to make things difficult for a physical invulnerability expert?" Lin Xiukong took out a thick stack of papers. "Flip through them. I'll give you a few words. You can sign the contract with Empress Luo directly later." He was in his 30s, thin and lean. His hair was neatly parted in the middle, and he wore a pair of black-framed glasses that said, "Everyone here is trash." "Sure." Lu Qing found a random table and sat down. Aman, who was keeping quiet beside him, tactfully asked Lin Xiukong what he wanted to drink. "A cup of hot coffee, no sugar," Lin Xiukong replied casually. He looked at Lu Qing and said, "Your basic salary is 50 million after tax. It's slightly higher than the market rate, but it's still reasonable. Also, you will have a certain percentage of shares in all the companies and industries under Longhu. You can flip through them here, here, and here. In short, you're only receiving dividends and can't sell them. If you leave Longhu, they will be taken back. Also, in simpler terms, every time you win a title, you will have the right to choose which company to transfer a certain percentage of shares to. This will truly belong to you, even if you're no longer in Longhu Club. When the entire team wins the championship of the top professional competition, different percentages of shares can be transferred according to different contributions. Like the Dragon King, he's already a major shareholder of several companies." As he spoke, Aman returned with a tray. She gave Lin Xiukong a cup of hot coffee and a glass of milk. Of course, she didn't forget to give Lu Qing a glass of ice water. Lin Xiukong nodded in satisfaction. He picked up the milk, poured some into the coffee, and stirred it with a spoon. He took a sip and continued, "You're a core member of Longhu Club. This is equivalent to Longhu's board of directors. You have the right to decide on the plans for the industries under Longhu Club, the changes in management, and the various department heads of the club. If you're not good at this, you can hire a professional consultant. Don't worry. You don't need to be all-round to be a boss. You just need to know how to find professionals to solve professional problems. That's not a big deal." Lu Qing smiled nonchalantly. His wife specialized in this. Moreover, after 4 years, her connections in the industry wouldn't be bad. Learning from a top master was the most basic benefit. "You're getting into your role pretty quickly." Lin Xiukong laughed. "Your senior sister doesn't care about anything and leaves everything to your brother-in-law. I'm about the same. The corner of Lu Cheng's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. One more thing. As long as it's within reason, you have the obligation to accept the missions assigned by Longhu Club. How about it? No problem, right? Lin Qiukang asked. This is the part related to the military. Since Geyser had mentioned it in advance, Lu Cheng had an idea. He took a sip of ice water and said, "That's what we agreed on." That's good. There's nothing else. It's too complicated and word-sensitive. If there's anything you don't understand in the future, give me a call. Lin Qiukang tidied up the thick stack of documents on the table. All right. How about the commission, as usual? Lu Cheng asked with a smile. You can give me a discount. Lin Qiukang laughed. The two shook hands and waited for Almond to call Empress Luo's office. After confirming that they could go directly, they stood up at the same time and headed to the 5th floor to sign the contract with Ning Zitong, the representative of the club. After everything was done, Lin Qiukang bade farewell and left. Lu Cheng got Almond to go to the finance team to handle the procedures of deducting the commission from the club's salary. Ning Zitong led him to the quarantine area of the building where the fire sect's physical and vulnerability chapters and the volcano laboratory were located. Don't apply for the use of the volcano laboratory for now. Wait until you've more or less mastered the physical and vulnerability chapters before you consider it, Ning Zitong said with a smile as she walked. The fire sect is different from the ice sect. No matter how dangerous the ice sect is, it takes a certain amount of time for the effects to show. In the fire sect, the results can be seen in a few seconds or even in an instant. Think about it. If your mastery of the physical and vulnerability chapters isn't firm enough, and you're in an extremely hot environment, the slightest mistake could turn you into ashes in an instant. There's no saving you. Wait until your foundation is solid, then take it slow and get used to it step by step. In the future, you'll definitely be like the Dragon King, using molten steel and magma as your environment. Okay. Lu Cheng also knew the difference between the fire sect and the ice sect, so he didn't have any objections. Of course, Empress Luo was being overly cautious. There was still a big difference between him and a physical and vulnerability expert who specialized in the fire sect. If anything were to go wrong, the ice sect could save the day, so he wouldn't be reduced to ashes. Passing by the laboratory and passing through several alloy doors, Lu Cheng entered the physical and vulnerability training room. The temperature in this room rose abruptly, making one feel as though they were in boiling water. The physical and vulnerability chapters of the fire sect were divided into 9 small rooms. The names were engraved on the doors. Lu Cheng looked around and saw everything. First move, a single spark makes a prairie fire. Second move, golden flames of the righteous god. Third move, Lord Emperor's purple flames. Fourth move, flying flame meteor. Fifth move, burning mountains and evaporating lakes. Sixth move, wheels of wind and fire. Seventh move, fire-like invasion. Eighth move, mirage, suffocating hell. Ninth move, 9 rotations of 5 flames, descend of the sun. Phew. Lu Cheng exhaled, warmed up his body, and happily walked towards the door of the first move. As long as Yan Zhika was in Connecticut, Lu Cheng would have an unshakable 1.5-hour break every day at 11 p.m. for video chats. After lunch and a short nap, he would continue training to make up for his previous training. At 3:30 p.m., he took the nanny van and headed to the 2 villas and a high-rise mansion that he had chosen the day before. He recorded the scene and checked the situation. Almond shamelessly knocked on the doors of the people nearby and asked about their living conditions. She also obtained more reference information from the property management. After some comparison, Yenjika chose the villa near Shepe Lake. The next day, Almond took Lu Cheng's notarized authorization and relevant documents and began to handle the property transfer. At the window, the staff member looked at Almond suspiciously and curiously after comparing the documents. He passed the documents back. What about his wife? The property transfer requires both husband and wife to have one. Wife? Husband and wife? Almond was almost confused. Shortly after, she came to a realization. Lu Cheng is already married. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.